Survivor specialist Phil and Alexa are back with another episode of Winning Survivor, our 8th one in the series. Only 3 left, including tonight. Tonight we're going from San Juan del Sur till Kaoh Rong, seasons 29 through 32. We're talking Natalie Anderson, we're talking Mike Holloway, we're talking Jeremy Collins, and we're talking the Queen. We're going to be going through this with Once Upon an Island. As always, Wes, thanks for coming on again. I know you have some exciting news. What do you got to tell everybody before we get into it?
I do. Yeah, I have. So finally, it took like forever for YouTube to approve it, but I have the Tony Vlaco story going up on my channel next Monday. It's like 50 minutes long, top of my head. It's probably longer than that. It's so long. But it's these Winners at War winning video. So it's a huge one. We got to put that front because I know, Phil, you also have something to put up front here as well.
Yeah, and I know for a lot of you who I know this is the first episode, and of course to age this, but this is the first episode we're doing since Survivor was canceled officially for the fall. And so to announce that, I know that's really depressing news, and a lot of people want to fill that void. I have been doing daily podcasts for our patrons, 510
content.
Daily. We need that. Daily. It's like Alexa's coming in from the rafters. She's like the
Oh, you know what I'm gonna do? You guys keep talking. I have an idea.
Okay,
Daily.
Alexa's going to do what she's doing. But so daily content for patrons, $5, $10, $20 tier. This is going to keep going probably through all of August. I've been releasing about 2 of these every day where I go through my top 100 players and I do about a 10-minute thing. Alexa just put up live with StreamYard. Thank you. Now everybody
Working
knows.
on it.
But so if you're looking for nonstop Survivor content, you go to patreon.com/Survivor Specialists. And you're going to get daily content. Every day, I'm releasing 10 to 20-minute videos about my top 100 players, my reasoning for doing it. So if you want more of a conversation than just what you hear with us with Russell or what you hear with us over at or on Twitter, because I like to engage the trolls by telling them they stink. And then they're like, oh, I was just kidding. And I'm like, you better have been. But I just want everybody to know that $5, $10, or $20 tier. Alexa and I have a lot of fun stuff planned for our patrons as well. So even if you want to just be in the $1 tier and get into the Facebook group, I know a lot of people are going to be struggling right now with a lack of Survivor coming up in our lives that we know of. But Alexa and I are going to keep moving through. We got a lot of things planned for our regular YouTube page, and we have a lot of things planned for our Patreon. So if you are not a patron now and you've always been thinking about it, there is no better time than the present. If you became a patron yesterday, you would have received 2 top 100 player episodes, and then today 2 top 100 player episodes and our July 2020 Q&A. So there is no better time than now to become a patron. And I'm done now. I'm off my high horse, but I've been so excited and I've done nothing but talk about my top 100 players. Who doesn't want to hear about Gary Hogaboom? Am I right? All right.
Nobody.
Wait, isn't Gary's like, he's a farmer, right?
No, he was a landscaper.
Landscaper.
From
My bad. Yeah.
Yep. So who doesn't want to hear about that? But hey, anybody who's looking for that, get on there, go become a patron. Alexa and I, like I said, we have really good ideas coming up for our patrons, and we have some really fun stuff planned that they've already been involved in, and they don't even know what's coming. So they're about to get hit. But that's all we're going to get now into. We all agreed last week,
hold on before we begin. We have to answer this question because we get it every single episode. It's asking, are we going to rank all 40 seasons? Let's just answer this question. Are we ranking all 40 seasons, Phil?
I've already ranked all my 40 seasons.
I can't do it again.
We're not going to rank it. I did my top 100 players. You can figure out where I have winners in that. So go ahead and do that. Although actually ranking winners and then ranking top 100 Survivor players is actually different because players who had better wins, I might rank higher, but that doesn't mean that I necessarily think they're a better player. So that's beside the point. But we all agreed last week and we all agreed tonight. I know beforehand we were discussing it. We're going to be doing actually a 3-hour episode tonight, 3 hours and 15 minutes, 3 hours about Michele Fitzgerald, 15 minutes combined about the other 3. So we have 5 minutes to talk about Natalie Anderson. If you guys want to jump in real quick, round table, and then we'll move on so we can get to Michele and spend.
Wes, we're gonna have a quick 15-minute chat, and then if you want to go just like grab a drink or something, we can let Phil just talk to himself for the next 3 hours.
I've been practicing with this daily content. Have I mentioned that yet?
Natalie, good. Mike, good. Jeremy, great. Okay.
Yeah.
Moving on. All right. And
Done.
Michele Fitzgerald. Woo. All right. But no, in all seriousness, of course, we're going to still do the full half hour on all these people. And then the last half hour is just going to be me praising Michele while I have to convince Wes that she is worthy of the title of Sole Survivor.
I never said anything different.
I know you didn't, but I got to make somebody the scapegoat.
I got
already
advocate. Okay.
exactly. But so we're talking about Natalie Anderson, winner of Survivor, Juan Del Sur, the second iteration of Blood versus Water. She comes into this season already with reality TV experience under her belt. She had played The Amazing Race a couple times with Nadia. They were the twinnies, the most obnoxious duo in the history of reality TV. It drove me absolutely nuts. I wanted them both voted out early. Nadia going home might be the best thing that ever happened to Natalie. But we're talking about Natalie here, not Nadia, and not them together. But what do we think about Natalie Anderson, the winner of the second iteration of Blood versus Water, Alexa?
I mean, Natalie in her first season and in her second season, it's kind of all about redemption. You talked about Nadia goes home. It's all about redemption. Jeremy goes home, who's her new Nadia. Jeremy goes home, but his name is not out the window. The whole time she is playing to avenge her sister, to avenge Jeremy. And then when you get to Winners at War, which I know not exactly what we're talking about, she's like avenging herself. So I love Natalie's hustle. I don't think you see a player like that. And Natalie is strong-willed. Her personality is very strong. I think she would say that too. Mm-hmm. And for some people that could rub them the wrong way, but you don't see that kind of just raw competitive spirit in many winners. And you know what? We are not shown many women winning that way. And that's what I really like about her.
Natalie, is she a hero or a villain? Because Phil just said 2 of the 3: return, revenge, redemption. You know, that's what she's here for. Which one would she be based on Survivor, not based on?
She's a villain. She's a hero.
She's a hero.
I think she's a villain.
Oh my gosh! On The Amazing Race, Alexa, I don't know if you've watched it.
I know she's tough. I know it's tough.
Her on The Amazing Race, her and Nadia, villains. But I just watched it like in the past month or so. On The Amazing Race, she was definitely a villain. It was mostly her. Nadia was like there along for the ride, which is a bit surprising considering that they hadn't been on Survivor yet. So Amazing Race is like discovering these people. So it's not like because they're on Survivor, Natalie got more screen time. It's like, no, Natalie actually was the villain. So coming into the season, it's hilarious that she's the one who gets the end and not Nadia, because Nadia is definitely the nicer one of the two based on Amazing Race.
I was disgusted when they casted Natalie and Nadia. I seriously was. They drove me insane. And that was when I was really watching The Amazing Race, because this was like my college days. Nothing to do on like a Sunday night, whatever. You throw on The Amazing Race after football or something, you watch it. And they were just, they felt like they were always on my TV. I couldn't get away from them. It was like nightmare. But I actually really liked Natalie on this season. I think the best thing for her is that Nadia is the first person booted, because everybody could kind of just fall in love with Natalie for who she was. Something that we're not really going to discuss, but I think needs to be mentioned here is that out of the people we're talking about tonight, out of the 4, we have the 2 highest average placements in Survivor history for players who have played more than one time. And that is Natalie Anderson with 1.5 and Michele Fitzgerald with 2. And I know that that's something where you're like, okay, but what does that mean? It's insane to really think about it. I know they played on a winter season, so maybe somebody would be there, but I'm just saying, like, that's really impressive. I don't, obviously Natalie gets voted out the first boot. So how much credit do you really give her for finishing second? I mean, maybe we should give her the average of first 18th and second, or first 20th and second, whatever it is. But it's just one of those things where we're going to be talking about that tonight. And Natalie's not somebody, when you look at the Juan Del Sur cast, when it came out originally, and you say to yourself, who is going to have the best average placement in Survivor history for somebody to play more than once? Nobody would say Natalie Anderson. If you would have said it comes from Juan Del Sur and you didn't actually know that the season, how it played out, you would not say Natalie Anderson.
Especially if you're familiar with them on The Amazing Race. And for anyone who hasn't, they played on, I believe it was season 21, and they finished in 4th. And then they played again on basically Amazing Race All-Stars 2 is what I'll call it. And they were out first. So I actually thought it was really ironic that they were out first that season. And then they come into this one, Nadia's out first, and then Winners at War, Natalie goes first. With the exception of that first Amazing Race season, they're out. One of them's out first every time, which I always find amusing. But no, I agree with you, Phil. Like, just based on like what we knew about Natalie coming into the season, because they already been the Amazing Race twice. No way would I have guessed Natalie comes out of the season as the winner.
No,
No.
And I know a lot of people, and I guess this is just my opinion, but I'm curious to hear what you both think. I actually think Natalie is one of the more overrated winners in the history of the game. A lot of people give her so much credit for what she did in San Juan del Sur, but I actually think the supporting cast helped her a lot, and I think that the only way Natalie Anderson wins Survivor, because I mean, throw Winners Out War out because she's the first boot, so like whatever. But I think the only way she wins Survivor is on a blood versus water season. I don't know, because she had the whole storyline the entire time of I'm solo now, I'm not a threat, and that really drove her through the game. Had she not had that, I think she gets booted almost immediately coming off of the Amazing Race.
Yeah, I think people like her because she has the really good story. It's pretty much the exact same thing as the Tyson story, and she's different. Kind of like what I said earlier. She's scrappy and she's abrasive, and shockingly in a good way, people don't like hate her for that. So I think she's just a breath of fresh air. I think she's not your typical winner that we see. She's definitely not your typical woman winner that we see.
Absolutely.
That's why I actually like her, is because she doesn't fit like, I feel like while every winner is unique, I do feel like we can categorize a lot of them. Natalie, I feel like, is not easily categorizable.
Right.
So I agree with you, Alexa. She was something different, especially after. And by the way, we already mentioned this whole season about her revenge and redemption or whatever. It's like, and as you said, Alexa, it's very similar to Tyson. So it seems like each time there's blood versus water season, this happens. I wonder if they ever do a third one, if it'll be like that again. Like the winner is because they're driven by their.
And look at what Jeremy's able to do on this season after Natalie gets voted out. He kind of uses that as his arc because they were so close.
Gets voted out?
No, I'm talking about in actually Winners at War now. And I know technically Natalie beats him, but look how far Jeremy goes. I think in these types of seasons where there's that really, really strong connection, it doesn't work with Boston Rob and Amber, but that's an outlier. But like, it's always going to be easier to feed us the storyline of that's my girl, that's my wife, that's my sister, that's my whatever, and now I'm a lone wolf. I don't think it's any surprise that the two people who win blood versus water seasons had their loved ones go early, because once they're gone, I had to talk about in my daily content, I talked about Jacqueline Schultz. Jacqueline Schultz is a great player. She had to deal with not just Survivor, but her knucklehead fiance. She had to deal with John Mish, and that actually made her game harder to play because his ego is so big. She had to navigate that. Natalie could just kind of be like, all right, you guys just eat each other. Wes is always going to be an easier target than Natalie because Wes's dad is there. It's a guaranteed vote. And, I know she still worked through the game with pairs with Missy and Baylor and with Wes and Keith, and then again with John and Jacqueline. She does work through the game with pairs, but the easy part for her was that she didn't have a pair, so she could just keep being like, I'm going to keep flipping this around. And her best move, in my opinion, is the John Mish boot for sure.
I think Wes was such a big target because he was the chicken nugget eating champion. So.
Yeah, that's definitely what it was.
Big target in his back.
Absolutely.
I think something interesting about Natalie is she's the first Asian American woman to win, because we always think Yule's the first Asian American to win, but we forget that she's the first Asian American woman to win. So that's also a partially, I think, why she's such a breath of fresh air, because we see a lot about how like her and her sister, correct me if I'm wrong, they didn't grow up in America, right? Or
I think they grew up in Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, yes. I feel like
Sri Lanka.
Sri Lanka, yeah. And I think that's also why she's such a different person from a lot of people we see on Survivor. But I feel like it really, once Jeremy gets voted out, that's when she like kicks it into gear in this season. I know like now, like Nadia's driving her, but I feel like once Jeremy goes, that's really when her game like the first half season, not really. I from what I recall.
First half of the season, and this might be a controversial thing to say, John Rocker's on that season, and I don't know why they cast him. That was objectively not. Just not smart. And when she and John Rocker like kind of get into it,
she's nasty.
Yeah, she is.
He doesn't. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he doesn't really start it. No. She jumps on in, and then he says, "I'd punch you if you're a guy," which then that's not great.
And here's the problem. And I always go back to this, but like this is my mild defense of John Rocker. Mild. And first of all, I need to address this too. John Rocker, Natalie, and Nadia are actually very good friends now. Like John Rocker has made that announcement and said, like, we go out, like we've been out to dinner in New York City, and like all the people that he supposedly hates, he hangs out with Reed and Josh and like does all this stuff. He had that crazy article, and it's a terrible interview. There's no doubt about it. But actually, when he came onto this season, when John Rocker comes onto this season, you can tell that he's trying to be different. He's trying not to be that. And the one thing I will say, and I guess it wasn't as dangerous in 2015 or 14, whatever year this, as it would be now. But Natalie does, I personally believe, cross a line when she yells at him, why don't you just go and say something racist? Mm-hmm. And I think when you start accusing somebody of racism, it does cross like that line of now you have to totally. And should he have defended himself by saying, if you were a man, I'd punch you in the face? No, that is absolutely not how you defend yourself. But I do think that once it's racism, we're so hypersensitive to that, because the worst thing you can be labeled in society is a race. I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I think John, because of his past and because of all of that, Natalie was just kind of throwing the statement out to fire him up. Mm-hmm. And it works. It definitely does. But at the time, I think a lot of people were actually like, she's being ridiculous. Why did he just say he was going to punch her in the face? But why is she saying that? Because we saw him on the season try to work with Val, try to work with Jeremy. Like, we see him working with Josh. His closest ally in the game is Josh. And I think a lot of people were just like, why is she saying that? And she, I think, was kind of lucky that it was so early in the game, and her closest ally was Jeremy, who was also under the belief that Val was voted out because of John Rocker. And they kept winning challenges. She goes to one tribal council pre-merge. I think that really helped Natalie, because it was able to just kind of throw that into the background and nobody even remembers that happened.
So I think here's how I remember these events, because I did rewatch this season recently as well, is Jeremy tells everyone who John Rocker is. Mm-hmm. And then from there, Natalie takes that and uses it against him. But I think what's important for context is that John Rocker, the things that they're talking about that he said was in 1998. He's 39 when the season starts, and this is 17 years later, 16 years later than when he said his comments. And that's not to excuse his comments from the past, but people grow up and people mature, people learn, more about life. And I feel like John, as you said, Phil, was trying to like show that he's not the same guy he was when he was like 24, 25, whenever he made those comments. But obviously he's still John Rocker. So that's what he said. He told Natalie to punch her in the face, which does not excuse that either. But they were like attacking him or something he said in 1998. And it's like, it kind of sucks for him that, but then again, he's this public figure. Yeah.
It's always going to follow him.
Live with.
Yeah, it's always going to follow him. And again, like 1998 to 2000, it doesn't like excuse anything that he said, but it's one of those things too. I think what pissed him off the most in that situation is clearly this was the first time Natalie had ever heard about that. And I think so when Natalie like starts yelling at him, he's just like, you don't even like, it's one thing if Jeremy says something because Jeremy knew who he was and probably had read the interview, which if you haven't read the interview is by Jeff Pearlman. It was in Sports Illustrated. It's insane. It's insane.
Not great at all.
It's insane. And so like it's one of those things that is very justified in terms of like the anger towards John. But on this season, the way it was playing out, he was being accused of something that didn't actually
tribe. So they're not even living with him.
That didn't actually happen on the season. And Jeremy had put that thought into everybody's mind. And it's crazy because Natalie was the one who really like threw that into the air and was the one who was saying it the most. Mm-hmm. Like it wasn't like Natalie was the most vocal. I remember that challenge like perfectly. And I remember her saying, why don't you go say something racist or something? And I was just like, whoa, where did that come from? And some people probably fell in love with Natalie because she's standing up to John Rocker. And I know as a Yankees fan myself, everybody in New York hates John Rocker even before he made those comments. Yeah. But also like, it's one of those things too, where it's like, wow, if they actually vote out John, which they did, and then there's a standing ovation, and it's one of the most awkward moments in like the history of the show. I don't know. It's very, very interesting how Natalie was so aggressive and so loud and abrasive, which we've heard from people in Winners at War is also one of her flaws, was that she was loud and abrasive and aggressive and all of that. But on this season, it worked because at the end of the day, she could go back to Hanapu and be like, doesn't Drew suck? Shouldn't we just get rid of Drew? Like, it's crazy.
With that though, I would say while we're over here like defending John to an extent and saying Natalie, this is a bad move by her, I think at the same time we should give credit to Jeremy, who doesn't win the season, but he's going to come up here soon, in terms of poisoning an entire tribe on John. Because if John had made the merge, he would have been an early boot. Or if John gets to a swap, which he doesn't, he's just going to be a target until he's gone. So it's like, whether Jeremy meant to or not, it was a great move by Jeremy to poison everyone on him, because Jeremy's clearly not going to work with John based on what he thinks about him.
Well, and it's also why Julie ends up quitting, because John's out of the game. If John's still in the game, and John actually was doing well on his tribe. He really was. Like, John had found an idol. John gets voted out with an idol in his pocket. People forget that. John Rocker goes home with an idol in his pocket. So he's actually doing pretty well on his tribe. Julie ends up quitting. Mm-hmm. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, I actually think that, part of the reason Jeremy goes home as early as he does is because John Rocker goes home where he does. But going back to Natalie here, if you look at this season, it's divided into 3 different eras, I believe. And it's the Josh is going to win, the Jeremy is going to win, and then this is the most obvious winner in the history of the show, which is Natalie. But she doesn't become obvious until Josh and Jeremy are both gone. Because I remember as soon as Josh got voted out, everybody said, well, this is stupid. Jeremy's going to win. Okay, we get it.
Yeah, I know. And their fight was supposed to be this absolutely gigantic, like multi-episode arc, and it happened immediately.
Back-to-back episodes right at the merge.
I'm not sure if everyone remembers this about Natalie, and I don't know if you guys have. I'm sure you guys maybe have rewatched the finale of Winners at War since it's aired. But if not, I'll remind everyone that if you pay attention just to Natalie in the Winners at War finale, she's very salty from the moment she gets back in the game. She's like, they're like, oh, welcome to the beach, welcome to the tribal beach. She's like, the one I used to live on, and she's just like that the entire time, and it makes me wonder like how much that was covered up on San Juan del Sur. But also, then again, I'm like, this is her after she's been voted out coming back in the game. It's a little bit different of a circumstance because on San Juan del Sur, she doesn't go to tribal at all in the pre-merge. So things are really going her way. She gets no votes against her all game. So maybe she wasn't like this at all in the season, and that's why she wins. But it does come up on Winners of War, and it makes me like kind of question, like, because it reminds me of her on The Amazing Race with the way she was talking on Winners of War.
Yeah, I think it's really accentuated because 1, she loses, and 2, she ends up getting voted out. And I think, like, from an editing perspective, like, she has this really, really awesome comeback story, but the viewer needs to not like her because we need to like Tony. Yeah, and obviously we don't need to be told to like Tony.
Sure,
but I think maybe that's why they show that. But at the same time,
no, she says a lot of things. It wasn't just the one. It was like I could count on 2 hands.
Yeah, exactly. Like the whole time she's frustrated.
One thing I want to say about San Juan del Sur, and it's a reason why I don't necessarily think it's a great season. I think on a rewatch it actually does get better. But I think what's interesting about San Juan del Sur is you're saying Natalie, oh, she's not that. The only likable character after Jeremy gets voted out is Keith. And that's why everybody loves Keith. If you really think about it, John and Jacqueline drive everybody insane. Baylor and Missy are the worst. Like, and I'm just saying this from a perspective of watching it. We've interviewed Missy. She's amazing in person.
And Baylor's great too.
Yeah, but watching it on TV, the problem with a blood versus water season, I think, is exactly what happens because of Baylor and Missy. When Baylor does something wrong, she has somebody there to defend her. And that's not Survivor. Like, defend her on like a real life level. I don't like that. Like, if somebody breaks you down on Survivor, like how Gabby is just devastated all the time, I want the inner strength and like real
David versus Goliath.
Yeah, and I'm talking to like Mike Holloway, who we'll talk about soon, when he goes to Shireen and Shireen is at her bare bones, most desperate. Like, that's what Survivor is, because it's supposed to take away all of everything else. And Baylor didn't have to have everything taken away from her because her mom was there to defend her. But all I'm saying is, Alec and Wes are invisible the entire season. Reed is the most bitter person to ever play the game. You have Jacqueline and John, who drive everybody nuts. You have Baylor and Missy, who nobody was rooting for. And the only other 2 players that you have left are Natalie and Keith. So I think it was easy to hide how bitter Natalie was because everybody else is so negative.
I don't know. This is not one of my favorite. I will vocally say I struggled to finish the season the first time I watched it. Like, it was once Jeremy goes, I'm like, oh, this is hard to watch. Because I think a lot of that, and I don't want to down. I know we talk about how One World, like Kim wins so dominantly, it makes you question how good the cast really was. But in this season, I kind of feel the same way. Like, I feel like how much of this cast is like actually like no Survivor before they came here? Because I don't get that feeling watching Blood vs. Water, the first one, or even Cagayan, the previous 2 seasons, or even Worlds Apart the next season. I don't get a feeling that like how much does this cast really know about Survivor?
I'll tell you though.
This cast, I feel like that.
I'll tell you though. I think that's a misread, because I think the problem is a lot of the players who do know the game were out, and this is and Kelly Wentworth had always watched it. Dale didn't.
Yeah.
Wes had always watched it. Keith didn't.
No, yeah. I knew that from the
Jeremy had always
Jeremy
watched
and Josh.
it. Yeah, Jeremy had always watched it. Josh never watched, actually. It was Reed who was the huge fan, and he got Josh to play. So when you start breaking it down, I think you have about 50%, and then you get to Jacqueline and John, who had never seen an episode. You get to Baylor and Missy, who had never seen an episode. Mm-hmm. And the problem is when you get to the end, nobody left at the end of the game after Wes goes home is a fan of the show. So they're all just kind of there like, what the hell is going on?
But I think it's the same point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
that basically like from what, final 7, final 8 at that point?
Yeah, nobody knows the game, and that's why I think it becomes a struggle. And also, though, why I think Natalie's able to succeed is because of prior reality TV experience. And I think that prior reality TV experience, even though Amazing Race is a way different game than Survivor, it comes through when your back's against the wall. She knows how to play, whereas everybody else, especially John and Jacqueline, Baylor and Missy, they're kind of still like hashing out their own issues, and she's just planning ways to blindside them.
Isn't it crazy? And we've talked about it this whole series, how many people come from The Amazing Race. And I'm pretty sure a few of them have won. Natalie being the most recent example in terms of our series, but I believe Natalie White also, from what I recall, was an Amazing Race transfer who won. Like, there's a few others. I believe Earl, didn't he try for The Amazing Race, but got put on that show, put on Survivor, and then won? Like, it's crazy to me how many people are trying for The Amazing Race, but they're throwing on Survivor instead. Maybe because Survivor seems like it's harder, and Amazing Race seems like it's a glorious like adventure around the world. Maybe they get more applicants. I don't know. It's
also too like The Amazing Race doesn't rely as much on character. It's more about like what you're doing. And I think what ends up happening is they'll see somebody who's like a great character and they'll be like, man, we should throw them over to Survivor. Whereas like think about Survivor and who they throw to The Amazing Race. Keith and Whitney have played The Amazing Race. They're terrible on Survivor, but they can still play The Amazing Race because on The Amazing Race, you don't need to give great confessionals or really tell a great. So you just have to do what you have to do. It's a different type of animal. But Alexa, Natalie Anderson, we just saw her play. What's like I want to know, like, what's your take on Natalie? Could she win again? Could a player like her win again? And what's your just overall take on like her legacy?
I was going to say, I think Natalie can win again. I think Natalie got dangerously close. That sounds bad because for her, obviously she wanted to win. Natalie almost won. Natalie got second place. And that did have a lot to do with the fact that she was on edge of extinction. I think that's both why she didn't get third place, but also why she didn't get first place. But I think as much as we're hearing that she maybe pushed some relationships away on the edge, there were a lot that she really, really nurtured. So I think Natalie is someone who could totally play because she does have the loyalty aspect, but I think I'd really like to see her play on a game where she doesn't have a connection to someone, where she's not playing with her sister and she's not playing with her best friend, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's where I kind of hurt. And I think my microphone just came out, so give me a second here. But
no, you sound fine.
Okay, cool, because it just unplugged. But I don't actually think she could win again, and I think the reason is this is going to sound bad, but I don't think she's likable enough from a social standpoint. I think this was the perfect season for her because I think people really at that final tribal council were voting. Nobody was going to vote. Missy was not getting votes. We all knew that. But with Jacqueline, I actually think people were more voting against John and Jeremy being a big cheerleader for Natalie. And I also think Wes really liked Natalie. And when Wes votes one way, he pulls 3 votes with him because then Keith and Alec were going to vote the same way as him too. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if Alec Alec did vote Natalie. So that's what ends up happening. I actually think Reed and John had the right idea here voting for Jacqueline, but because I think a lot of people hated John so much, it cost Jacqueline the game, and that's what helps Natalie. So I don't know if she's actually likable enough, and I know that sounds bad, but it's kind of like the same thing. She's not Brian Heidick levels of unlikable, but It's kind of like Jenna Maraska, you know, like, is she actually that good? Or was it just the perfect combination of who she was sitting next to? Because the votes she gets in Winners at War are people who had either A, never met Tony, or B, had spent so much time with her on the edge, or she had given them something on the edge that they almost felt like, okay, great, this is justifying my win. So I'm not surprised she gets votes on Winners at War. But if she goes to another Final Three and actually plays the entire game the same way she plays San Juan del Sur, I don't think she wins.
Yeah, I'm not a huge defender of Natalie. I'll let Alexa defend Natalie.
I mean, Alexa, what do you got? I mean, honestly, like, what do you think about
that? Based on that, I think she could win the San Juan del Sur game because I think she's not necessarily the underdog, but I think she does run circles around the rest of that group. And to your point, Phil, people found John really annoying. People didn't find Natalie annoying or didn't find her as annoying as John. And I think you're right. I think Jacqueline was totally held back, but out of that, I think she could win a San Juan del Sur style game again, because I think we're at a point where people don't have to vote for someone that they love. Like, they don't have to be in love with who they vote. I know that helps, but I think that people can look past, okay, she's very competitive and therefore very intense, and I would still vote for her. I believe that.
It's kind of like Gabon, where people weren't really voting for Bob as much as they were voting against Sugar.
Yeah, you're right. And I honestly think she needs a perfect Final Three. I think the style of game that Natalie plays, if you're not coming off the Amazing Race, if people don't really know you, I think is very difficult to win, because I think it's an aggressive, abrasive, loud personality type game that doesn't necessarily translate well. And I think you need the perfect Final Three next to you. You sit next to, like, who she sat next to, you win. You sit next to a Philip and a Natalie, you win. You sit next, like, you start going down the list.
Strategy.
Yeah, she beats Spencer and Tasha in season 31. Like, that's just the way. But I think she needs the perfect group every time. She's like Adam Klein. She's never going to win just based on her name and her gameplay alone. She needs to also sit next to the right people.
Yeah. I don't know. This season's one of those ones where I go back to rewatch and I'm just like, I don't know. I'm kind of bored.
I like this though. We're at season, like, we're really, really late into this, and we're finally not agreeing on, like, collectively, like Ken's person went through. It took us 29 seasons.
Well, and I think Natalie is that example, though. I think that's how a lot of the community feels about Natalie. Some people love her, and some people think she's not that great, and I think she's just overrated. That's all.
Yeah, I would put her, if I had to rank winners, I'd probably put her middle of the pack.
Yeah, I don't think people rate her that high, though.
A lot of people do.
Natalie Anderson's a top 10 winner. I've never seen that.
Actually, a lot of people on Reddit say that.
Yeah.
I really think people just like her because she's different.
She is different. That is the thing.
Yeah, I don't know, guys. I troll Reddit like all day.
She gets no votes against her all game. She's not bad.
The problem is, Alexa, if you just Command F your name, you're not going to find Natalie Anderson posts. You're only going to see what people say about you. You have to go and
people only say amazing things about me.
I know. You need to go and you need to actually look up Natalie Anderson, not just yourself.
But no, Alexa would play a great Survivor game. I agree.
With that. Like. Yeah.
Upvote.
Alexa actually has 7 different Reddit accounts where she comments on each of them and then upvotes it from all the other ones. It's pretty amazing. But yeah, in terms of, like, where I have Natalie Anderson in my top 100 player rankings, I have her pretty low in terms of winners. I have her in that bottom tier, not the bottom tier of winners, and not the Bob Crowley tier of winners where he's on a tier all by himself. But right above that, I have Natalie Anderson in that next group. I really do. So
that's fine.
I think that's enough about Natalie. Let's move on to.
Hey, do you want to do confessional count before we move on?
Oh, that's right. I always forget about confessional count.
It's okay. I don't like when it overtakes the conversation. I actually like it at the end. So let's start with Natalie. How much do you guys think Natalie got?
47.
Yeah, 43.
46. Guess who has the most confessionals this season? It's not Natalie.
John.
Keith Nail.
John. Yeah, 56.
John,
John Mish. That's right.
Yeah, Mish. Keith has a second most, 47. He beats Natalie by 1. And then Jeremy gets 46 in his short time. So,
and Josh gets a lot too in his short time, right?
Josh gets an average of 4.5 an episode. Yeah, he does. He gets a lot. This season has 1, 2, 3, 4 single-digit confessionals, and one of those is Wes. But I think Wes gets more screen time. He's not a great confessional, but he's like when he's on screen.
Around, but he doesn't talk.
Yeah. He's not a great confessional giver. His dad was better at those, but he's still integral to the game. And then who are the other single digit? Isn't Kelly Wentworth one of the single digits?
No, definitely not. Wentworth got. Oh no, you're right. Holy cow! I didn't realize she only got 6.
Hi, everyone. I know, and you go, no, definitely not. I'm telling you guys, Kelly Wentworth, if she did not campaign as hard as she did after that season ended, she's never on Second Chance.
Oh,
she campaigned, kids. She campaigned.
Yeah, she did because even if you go back and rewatch the season, you're like, this is not the Wentworth I know. By the way, Dale, from what I recall, is the one. I was trying to think of who it was. I believe Dale's the one who's telling everyone. I forgot which episode. That Natalie and Nadia were like these villains on Amazing Race. And I believe was that the first episode, and that's how Nadia went home?
That's how Nadia goes home, because it's between Nadia and Dale. Dale is actually a very underrated Survivor player, and I will always stand by that.
Dale was poisoning his tribe, kind of like Jeremy was. I wonder if Dale makes the merge if Natalie goes, because Dale apparently he's the only one in the season who really knows about them from the Amazing Race, from the way it was shown. Mm-hmm. So I wonder. So this season has 445 confessionals. For reference, Cagayan had 459. And the next season we're about to talk about has 456. So we're actually, I believe this is a good number of confessionals, because if you remember the poorly edited seasons, as we call them, 382, 387, I feel like more confessionals is better for the most part.
Yeah. Well, we get to know the characters.
Just getting in the way of events. I don't like that, but yeah.
Yeah. But getting to know the characters is huge and all of that. And so let's move on here to season 30 then. Mike Holloway, a winner that a lot of people were surprised didn't actually come back to play on this last season. He's the only winner from the 30s other than Tommy Sheehan and Chris Underwood, who obviously were too new to not play on this season. I think a lot of people were surprised. I think Nick Wilson probably ended up taking his spot just because they have like the Southern thing going on. Mike wins Survivor Worlds Apart. He wins, I believe, 5 immunities, which ties him for the record. He plays an idol at the only other one.
With challenge wins, Natalie ties. She has tied for the most challenge wins for a female with 13. That includes rewards, pre-merge wins. Do you know who she's tied with though? Females.
Michele
Fitzgerald. That's right. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that for you. Move on to Mike.
Well, Mike
has one more than Natalie. Only one.
Exactly. And Mike wins 5 individual immunities. He needs them all. He plays an idol successfully. A lot of people, he's kind of like the more palatable version of Ben, I feel like, to the community, where it was like, oh, we like him. But also we don't like that he had to only win immunities to get there. Although I don't understand why winning individual immunity has suddenly become a negative.
Everyone loved it.
And everyone wants to go back to pure Survivor. Guess what? That's winning individual immunity.
It's winning individual immunity. He did a great job of it. Alexa, I'll open it up to you first. Mike Holloway, what do you think?
So candidly, this, out of these 4 seasons, this is the one that I can really speak the least on. I like Mike. I think he is, I think like what you said, comparing him to Ben, but a little more palatable version of Ben. I think that's a really good comparison. But the thing with Ben is, you just referenced his moment with Shireen earlier. He has these human moments. It's not like everybody, like, fans hated Mike. Like, the players were getting really frustrated with him. And there's the moment at the auction, which is a biblical blunder.
Yeah.
But other than that, I mean, he's a good guy. He stands up for the right people. People are just frustrated because he doesn't win the way that we want him to, which is stupid.
I hate it. I have Mike pretty high. I know somebody just commented, "Fill your legs in the way."
Yeah,
my back is
some inner thigh. We saw that.
My back is killing me from doing the Russell followed by this. But
podcasting for a while.
But no, I think Mike is very, very underrated, and it's one of those things. It does get a little bit frustrating, where it's like, it's got to be strategy, got to be strategy, got to be strategy. Why is a strategic? And I'm saying this as somebody who ranks their players and normally puts people strategically higher, but I think strategic players have a better chance of winning Survivor. But what is it that makes a strategic win? Like, I don't know, somebody throw out a strategic winner's name. Somebody just throw out any strategic winner. Vecepia. Okay, Tony, Vecepia. Yeah. What is it that makes that so much better than Mike Holloway winning 5 immunity? I don't understand.
Nothing.
Mike Holloway still did part of the game so incredibly well that he won the game. Like, he doesn't win the game if he doesn't do that so well. So I just think what is the knock here, Wes? What is it that we have to knock Mike Holloway for all the time?
So I think Mike's game goes really well, and I know everyone infamously knows this event where at Survivor Auction he was going to pull like just kidding on the letters, but then decided to do it, realizing his mistake, and of course that kind of buries him the rest of the season. He has to like overcome that because everyone is so stubborn and unforgiving. But also, but the reality is that no, there's only 2 goals in Survivor, and it's get to the end and get the jury votes. You know, if you sit next to Carolyn and Will and they don't want to vote for Carolyn and Will, well, good on you. That's what the goal of the game is. The goal of the game is not get there, but only win like one individual immunity or none. We prefer if none, and we prefer if you played idols correctly. And also, if it's possible, you could play an extra vote on somebody and do it correctly. Then I'll value your win.
Mm-hmm.
Like $1 million is $1 million. And Mike,
but also if you play a purely social game, then we're also going to hate you, as we talk about in season 3.
Yeah. You need to play social game the way I want you to play, and I don't like that. And same for Natalie. It's not that I'm not big. It's not that I'm not big on Natalie because I don't like the way she won. Natalie doesn't really connect with me, and that's fine. You know, Mike connects with me more, and it's probably because I'm also a dude. You know, it's one of those things. But the thing is that Mike earned his win, and I wish we got Mike over Ben on Winners at War. And it's not because I'm anti-Ben either, but I feel like Mike played such a unique game here. Like, I cannot name a winner before Mike who just dominates immunities and then wins. Most of the time we see this person winning immunities, they get second place. Yeah. You know, all the way back to Borneo with Kelly.
It took 30 seasons for that type of game to win. Well, it would have won 13.
And I want to throw this out here because this is from Dylan. He says he had to rely on wins because his social game was paranoid trash. Now that's normally like the general way that people feel about how Mike played, but my thinking is he is somebody who plays a social game that is paranoid trash, but then he turns around and beats a woman who plays a great social game. So what are we actually giving more credit to? If his social game was so bad,
then why did they vote for Carolyn?
Then why do they all vote for him instead of Carolyn? Because we see 4 seasons later. There you go. It's because we see 4 seasons later that Brad Culpepper does the same thing Mike Holloway does and loses to a much better social player because the people didn't want to vote for Brad Culpepper. So I don't understand why it is that we have to sit here and be like, oh, he had no social game, so he doesn't win. You don't get 8 jury votes. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's 8, right? No, he gets 6.
Mike
I'm sorry, because there's 8 people on the jury. It's a smaller jury. You don't get 6 jury votes if you're not a good social player. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't.
The thing with Mike is that you only have to play on the season that you're playing on. Mm-hmm. You only got to play with your jury. You're not there to impress the Cambodia jury. You're not there to impress San Juan del Sur jury. You're not there to impress America. This is not America's voting for Rupert. This is Mike impressing the Worlds Apart jury. And he did. And he impressed 6 of them. And that's all he had to do. That was all he has to do is get to the end and impress his jury. And I feel like we get so lost in like, how would he do on other seasons? It doesn't matter. He played on this season. And now if Mike plays on our season, we can talk about Mike. How would Mike, and we talk about it in every episode. I'm sorry. And like every time we talk about one of these winners, would they be able to play again? By the way, my answer is I don't think Natalie could ever pull off again. I know we never asked me. Mm-hmm. Fine. But
that's right.
That's okay. Right. Natalie, I feel like Natalie herself couldn't win again, but I feel like her character could. But Mike here is a little bit harder. And I do understand how people are like, I value him less because I'm not sure if his game translates in our season. I feel like Mike goes in our season. He doesn't pull this move at the auction that he pulled here. I feel like he learns his lesson. And that really is what socially like hurt him so bad. Because Dan at that point is anti-Mike and is basically poisoned on Mike. And Mike did a great job at the jury, by the way, flipping Dan, who I'm sure did his darndest the entire time he was voted out to poison the entire jury against Mike. I'm sure at no point Dan was like, well, Mike might apologize to me at Final Tribal. No, Mike did a great job flipping Dan. So I don't want to dominate the conversation, but I feel strong.
No, you're fine. That's fine.
No, but that's completely true. And I would like to see Mike play again because I think the bar is so the fan bar is so low that all he has to do is like blindside one person. All of a sudden he's the next Sophie. So I think he would do well on another season. And I think it's also worth noting that every single person post Survivor absolutely loves him.
Yeah.
He is loved by the community. And
has anyone ever said anything bad about him? Honestly,
no. Yeah.
I met Mike. I was pretty much blacked out. I don't remember it, but I met Mike. It was great. He seemed like a nice guy. Everybody told me it was fun, but no. And I think too, like Tyler Fredrickson votes for Mike over Carolyn. Tyler Fredrickson played the entire game with Carolyn, and he still votes for Mike because he respected Mike's game that much. Another thing to look at, and somebody brought this up in the chat, the way he played with the underdogs and convinced them, it's ultimately what puts him on the wrong side of the numbers. But if you're on the wrong side of the numbers, but all the people who are on the jury are going to vote for you, and you know you can win every single immunity challenge from here until the end of time, and you have an idol, then so what? He came in, the first 4 people voted out to go to the jury. He had already won the game. He'd already won the game. Because
none of them were from Escameca. None of them were from his tribe.
Exactly.
Like he only got 1 vote from his own tribe, man. That was Dan.
That was it.
Yeah.
And that's what's so impressive about this is that the first 4 people, and that's why it's like, oh, well, he needed this to win. Okay, but he had done everything he needed to do socially to get the jury votes and then go ahead and just win the rest of the challenges like he did. He did everything he needed to do. It doesn't even matter when Tyler and Dan get voted out what's going to happen, because one person, Rodney, votes for Will. I don't know what Rodney was drinking.
Well, Rodney and Will were best friends like all game. Like
True.
I know that. Like all
they
game.
were tight.
True. Yeah. Okay, but so all of that happens. Rodney's going to vote for Will. And if that's the case too, and you just want to get Rodney out of the game, you already have 4 votes and there's an 8-person jury. You can't lose. Just win every immunity. So while people will say his social game sucks, his social game is why he wins the game, because he convinces everybody.
The prize final too, like it wasn't Cagayan. He still wins. He has it locked up.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Alexa, anything to say on Mike with that? Does that convince you? I know you would need it to be convinced.
Oh, did you?
No.
He is not convinced. Did you guys just hear that? My Alexa just got so triggered by you saying that, Phil.
I did just hear that.
Yeah, she's not convinced. No, I like Mike. I would love to see Mike play again. And I think Mike's type could win again.
Yeah.
Mike said in all post-game interviews that he's going to win this game 3 times. He's getting up there in age, though. I'm not sure the likelihood of this, but he said he's going to win 3 times. I would love to see him at least get a chance to do a second time.
Here's guy 1, guy 2. It's better because you don't rely on challenges. That's the argument for why Mike's game isn't as good as the other ones. But I'm still saying that Mike didn't rely on it the entire time. I'm still saying he only had to rely on it at a certain point, and good on him for doing it. Also, he found an idol and successfully played an idol. That's not a bad thing, is it?
And no, and that's the thing. So I can't rely on challenges. Is it okay if I rely on idols? Like Phil just said, can I rely on my social game? Is that okay? Because then that makes me the Queen Michelle, the under-edited goddess. Like that's what can I rely on if I'm not allowed to rely on challenges?
Yeah. Yeah. We need the perfect mix, which is why Tony always falls in there, even though he never won a challenge. It's why, people always praise Kim and all of that, even though she did win challenges. It's got to be a mix, but you get players like Tommy and Michelle. I still think their wins are super impressive.
And what's great about Mike is that, everyone's like, this is a season where people are bullying. And I think Will's at the center of it from what I recall. Whereas bullying and he stands up for Shirin, he's with Shirin. And it's it's not even an editing thing. Especially now that we've gotten to know Mike post game, it's well, I'm glad actually Mike is like this in real life. It wasn't just edited because he's the winner to maybe cover up him bullying. No. And I feel that's, he's sitting there at the end with Will. And if anyone's taking their time to reflect on what Will's done at all, but I don't know. Mike's such a likable guy, and I think that we forget that a lot. When he does the happy dance,
yeah.
I mean, I feel that's just Mike. I feel Mike's not oh, the camera's on me, do the happy dance. I feel that's just what Mike feels. And he's oh, and there's a camera here.
Yeah.
where with Rupert, you get a lot of like, is he just doing this? Like, is Rupert going, oh my God, because the camera's there, you know? Or is
Yes. Yes, he is.
And there, Rupert's like, oh, look at this fish I found. Well, no one talks like that. But I feel like if Mike was by himself, he may not say I'm doing the happy dance, but I feel like he would do the happy dance regardless.
I agree.
Stuff like that. Remember when he ate the scorpion on day one? Was it day one?
It's day one. He literally walks out there and pulls off the stinger and eats the scorpion and starts sweating profusely because it was probably poisoning him. But and again, like people who want to knock his social game, the only social move on this season is being nice to Shireen. And he's the only one who stands up for Shireen. He's the only one. And I'm not a Shireen fan at all. Like I am whatever. I was so happy she got booted early in Survivor Cambodia. But for him to stand up to everybody else and pretty much say, I don't care that this is going to crush my standing in the game. You're all being assholes. Mm-hmm. It's amazing and good for him to do that. Like that's a great social move. And that got Shireen's vote. That's what you needed.
And I know you guys don't watch Big Brother, and I'm not going to touch on this too much, but there is a season of Big Brother that everyone knows is like a super racist season. And then the person who wins it, like, kind of ignores all the racism that's happening around them. And then now on Twitter is like, oh, I am, you know, like this social justice warrior, but like on their season, they weren't. And I feel like when you do it in the circumstance where it's like everyone around you is doing it, and it's like, this is the peer pressure, and you don't do it, it's like, that's really, in my opinion, more telling of your character than, you know, later on when you're on social media at your house. Like, it's not the same.
I'm so fascinated by Big Brother.
I don't recommend
the super racist season.
I don't recommend it. It was like Big Brother tries to like ignore it, like Survivor tries to ignore Thailand.
Hey, my mom
never got as bad as the Big Brother season, but yeah, I just feel like it's really telling of your character to be surrounded by all those people, and especially Mike, who's in like this underdog situation. He's not like in the majority. Where if he was in the majority and he did it, be like, okay, maybe we should listen to Mike. And Mike knows he has he has no social pull.
Yeah.
So he's not even like trying to like get in their good graces by also beating up on Shireen, which he could have, I guess. But
and I think like with Mike, and I'm going kind of back to what you guys were just talking about, but we live like one of like the things, my mom's a preschool teacher. So very much like actions speak louder than words. Words, you could say all you want, whatever. We live in an era right now, I think, of words speak louder than actions. I think people just say what they think people want to hear and then don't do anything. They just throw it out. I mean, that's what social media is, right? It's to be like, I am on this team. And like, but I think Mike Holloway is the definition of actions over words. Mike Holloway came out there and did every single thing he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
He supported people when they were down. He was out there for him. He won the challenges the way he needed to. He found idols the way he needed to. He was actions over words, and I'll take that any day of the week in a Survivor winner. I think that's what makes you a Survivor winner, is acting on what you said you were going to do. And whether it be him or it be Tommy Sheehan, who played two completely different games, Tommy's goal was to go out there and do exactly what Tommy did, and his actions were louder than the words. I give all the credit in the world to Mike.
Yeah. No, Mike's a good guy, and I like his win. And I think it's a shame it wasn't on Winners of War, but maybe it's for the best. Maybe they really like. I know we talked about it maybe a week or two ago, where I hope they bring back like maybe half a cast of winners. I hope Mike's on the half cast along with like Vesepia.
Hey, Alexa and I, we're telling you, if anybody listened to our Bloom podcast, second chances too, and include winners who have only played once. Let's do it.
What's the second chance for then? What's second chances to playing?
We don't have to call it second
winners
chance.
versus runner-up.
Or winners versus contenders or something.
Oh, dude, like a winners versus like runners up, or like Rob Goddesses, whatever you want to call it. On board, yes.
I think the reason you have to call it
second, put them on their own tribe. They can't be mixed.
I think the reason you have to call it second chances, though, is that we don't get Boston Rob and Parvati and Sandra. Like, I'm talking like one-time winners coming out to play Survivor. And one-time play, I think it's something they could do. There's a big calling right now for all the players who weren't actually on Winners at War to come back and play again. But let's hear what we got with Mike in terms of confessionals and such, and then let's ask if we think that somebody like Mike could win. Because I want to talk about the confessionals first, because I know this season was wonky.
It's more than Natalie. I'll give you that.
Yeah, I thought it's probably close to 60.
55.
So reminder, Natalie had 46. Mike has 73.
Whoa.
He doesn't miss an episode of confessionals, whereas Natalie had 2 episodes with no confessionals. In fact, his lowest like confessionals is like all in the pre-merge where it's like 4, 2, 2, 3, 5, 2, and then from there it's 7, 8, 5, 8, 3, 5, 8, 11. You know, he just like, he doesn't have like a Tony episode where it's like 18, but he has so consistently like close to double digits that it just adds up to 73.
I think people were a little exhausted by this point too, because this was our like 10th straight very obvious winner at a certain point. Like it got to a point where like if you go back to Kim was obviously going to win, Denise was obviously going to, it was Denise or Malcolm, but you kind of could feel that Malcolm wasn't going to pull it. Cochran was obvious, Tyson was obvious, Tony maybe not, Natalie was obvious after Jeremy goes, and then this season you get Mike, who's very obvious because when you're looking at the final 7 after Shireen goes home, it's Tyler, who never had a chance, Will, who didn't have a chance, Dan Foley, who didn't have a chance, Rodney, who Will was very supportive of and who I think is a very good player, and I'm talking our Will, not Will on this season, never had a chance, Sierra Dawn Thomas, who never had a chance, and Mama C, who maybe had a chance, but if you really watch the edit, you could tell she wasn't going to win the game. It became very obvious, and I think that's why Mike got a lot of hate, because it was just too obvious.
It's also an unenjoyable season. People don't like that season, and no one's going to love that winner.
I think it's only bearable knowing that who wins in the end.
Yeah,
like if Will had won this season, this would be like Thailand, like ignore it. But with Mike winning, it's like, okay, at least I know at the end there's a redemption. Like there's a story like surfacing throughout this whole thing. I feel like we've totally skipped Rodney. Rodney said some not great things on the season, but I feel like Rodney's hilarious. I don't ignore that. But Carolyn, actually, Mama C opened this season with 13 confessionals in the premiere, which is I forgot what.
she killed it. And one thing I want to say too about Mike, because you just brought up Rodney. Rodney was never going to vote for Mike, but what Mike did that was so great was at one of the tribal councils he went to after the tribe swapped, when it was Joaquin and Rodney were getting too close together, Mike was the one who decided to flip and say, screw you, I'm getting rid of Joaquin, I'll keep you around, but I can't keep him here. And he did it with Sierra, Dan, and Joe. And Tyler and Rodney and Joaquin all thought that it was going to be Joe who went home because they knew a merge was coming. And good on Mike for realizing, like, hey, I can't have Joaquin and Rodney hitting this merge together. It's a really underrated move because it happened so early in the game.
Was that, are we talking about the same time when Mike, did Mike throw the challenge? Is that what it was?
I don't know if he threw it. I don't remember.
There was definitely a challenge that either Mike threw or he helped someone else. No, he definitely helped somebody else win. I think it was the one where they were like, okay, it's the one where you like pull up the curtain and they have to memorize what's on the curtain and then they drop it.
Well, that was in the individual stage, wasn't it?
Was it? I thought that was tribal. Anyways, I remember, I'm pretty sure it was tribal, and I think it was post-swap. We might be talking about the same thing. I could be wrong.
I don't remember.
But it was definitely like, because they got rid of Joaquin. I think we're talking about the same thing here.
Well, I've never rewatched this season. So
I watched it in the past year. And I remember, I think it's the one where Joaquin, however you say that name, where he goes home. I think it's where they're like literally or like Mike is like trying to throw the challenge, and he just like, and they keep dropping the curtain over and over and over. And he's like, come on.
That probably is the Joaquin thing then.
Yes, it was.
Because he needed to weaken Rodney. But
yes. Who
else? So Rodney, I'm assuming, had a lot of guys. I know Mama C, even though she started off with 13, ended up with not that many confessionals.
Mama actually had 50. She had the second most of the season. I'm sorry, third most of the season.
Okay.
Rodney had 52.
Okay.
Yeah, no, Mama C, like, we could probably do a big part of that 13 in the first episode. Second episode, she has 0. But no, she had a good amount.
Everybody's looking here. Here's McKenna Feeney. He let Kelly have it. That's what it was. So you're right.
Yeah.
You're right.
I remember because like I can't remember another winner purposely throwing. I know Sandra in Prawns, they threw the challenge. That was not Sandra.
Yeah,
who threw the challenge. She just went along for the ride, which is classic Sandra. But Mike was like definitely like in charge of throwing the challenge, and it worked. It worked. So good on him.
Do we think Mike Holloway could win again, or a player like him could win again?
Yeah, I already kind of spoke about it earlier, but I absolutely think so.
I think Mike himself could win again. And I think this is a season that often gets forgotten, and we don't praise Mike as a great winner like we do with Kim. So Mike's name isn't like somebody who like people, just the general people who go on Survivor would know like, oh, Mike, gotta watch out for Mike, you know? Like if Mike's on a season when there's like other targets and he's not like the only winner, I think Mike could win again. But he does need to like go in already not making He cannot do another auction mistake or doing stupid things like the Scorpion. I don't think he's gonna do that again. But like he can't be like trying to get himself out of the game with the Scorpion or the auction thing. Like the auction thing was huge, and I know it's like he's not gonna repeat it, but like that's a killer to like anyone else who does that kills their game.
Good for him. No more auctions.
Yeah.
That's true. And by the way, that sucks. The auction's great, and there is a way to do it right. And I don't know what the whole excuse of they can't do it because of whatever. Whatever. Just hide the advantage in the food or something. I don't know. Don't tell anyone.
Yeah.
Just feel like there's an advantage in one of these meals when you buy it.
Don't put an advantage in and tell them up front.
Yeah. How easy that would be.
We hid the advantage in one of the foods that you're gonna buy. You'll find out when you get it.
Well, I think Mike could totally win again. I really do. I think he's a really good player. I think he's actually a really good guy. His social game might not have been great in this season, but it's a social game. His social game might not have been great because he was actually a good person. And there's a lot of people in this season who aren't very good people. So I think that helps him, or that hurts him a lot because he doesn't connect with them on a very good level. But it shows as we've been removed from this season that it makes kind of sense why Mike might not have gotten along with them. But I think he could win again. I think players like him could win again. I think, that type of immunity challenge beast, a little bit more likable than Brad Culpepper, sit down next to the right people that aren't Sarah Lucina, you win the game.
Yeah.
He kind of fits the Ozzy mold in terms of that, like Ozzy would have won had he not been sitting next to Yule.
Yeah.
It was just Ozzy and Becky. Ozzy wins. Mike didn't sit next to a Yule, so Mike wins,
Absolutely.
What it's all about.
I hear you. So let's move on here. Are we good to move on?
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
good to move on.
All right, let's move on to Survivor Cambodia, talking about Jeremy Collins, the winner of season 31, coming off his loss in season 29, which was shocking. I think Jeremy was one of the more predictable winners when we actually saw this cast announced. I know a lot of people were big on Kelly Wentworth, myself included. I thought she could win it. She was close. But Jeremy was pretty much like one of those where everybody was like, okay, he has a mind for the game. He's finally playing with people who know how to play it. He gets to the end against two people we all thought were actually great players who could have won in their own season, and he beats them 10-0-0. Alexa, I want to open it up to you first, too, again, because Jeremy, we just saw him, and I'm going to open up Michele to you first, Wes. But I want to ask you, Alexa, with Jeremy, what is your take on Jeremy's game here, just as a whole?
I mean, we just talked about Jeremy last night, so this is fresh in my mind. Jeremy, I think, is one of, if not the new school legend behind Tony. Jeremy completely 31 seasons into this, reinvents the big muscular man strategy, because we just said it took Mike 30 seasons to win. Jeremy does the complete opposite of that. He hides behind the mics and wins. And he's so social and he's so goofy. So even though he's wearing a Boston firefighter shirt, why do you not immediately get rid of that? Like, that's shades of
Tom Weston. There he is.
Tom Weston there. The guy's like, he's got a kid, like the whole thing going on. No one even wants to get rid of him. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Jeremy, I was very surprised when I watched the season because this is a stacked cast. Like, there's a couple in here who are like, yeah, not, like Sharon, we're like, but this is like going into this, like Vetus came out of Blood vs. Water. Like, he played a great game. He goes first, and it's like, that's the kind of cast we're playing with right now. Varner goes early. That was predictable, I believe, after like Australia not back. We really didn't know much about him in between. So there's a couple here predictable, but this is like a stacked cast. And Jeremy wins basically by being quiet, which is not what you would expect at all from Jeremy after San Juan del Sur. Because Jeremy played like he did on San Juan del Sur, he would not have won.
No.
That emotional game where he's like angry and like in confessionals, like just like, he's like so like he was so outraged like for all San Juan del Sur. We get to Cambodia, and maybe it's because Val's just not there. And so he's like, I can play a cool game now. Or, maybe this is just him really the whole time. Like maybe because he watched himself in San Juan del Sur, he realized, I think I'm coming off a little bit more than I want to. This is probably coming across to other people not that great. I feel like these returning. By the way, he's the first male winner, I believe, of an all returning season because
he is.
Sandra before him.
Yep. And And I think with Jeremy, when I look at like what he was able to do, you look at this cast, and actually I love the way the Bayonne tribe goes down, because the only person to not make the merge from the Bayonne tribe is the one person who shouldn't have been on the season, which was Monica Padilla. I was so stoked that she got voted out early. Yeah. And but what I think was amazing, if you look at the rest of the Bayonne tribe, Cass, Andrew Savage, Sierra Easton, Stephen Fishbach, Joe Anglam, Keith Nail, Tasha Fox, and then Kimmy Kappenberg.
Merge.
He could hide behind every single one of them except for Kimmy. Every single one of them is somebody who was coming into the game for one reason or another with a bigger target than Jeremy, which is insane because Jeremy is by far the best player out of that group. No questions asked, hands down. It's obvious. But just the perception coming in, San Juan del Sur is a very unpopular, not a very unpopular season, but compared to some of those others, was not a very popular season. He was not one of the people who made it far. He wasn't Keith Nail, who was one challenge away from winning. Yeah. He didn't get screwed the way that Andrew Savage did, and he didn't have the huge strategy thing the way Stephen Fishbach or Sierra did. He wasn't a huge, social threat the way Keith was. He wasn't a huge, I don't even know what you would call Cass, and he wasn't a huge physical threat like Joe Anglam, and he could just hide behind every single one of them and let them do what they were going to do. And because that tribe pretty much makes up almost all of the merge, he was able to just waltz his way to the end.
Yeah, and not to jump to a conversation we're about to have next week with Adam Klein, but Adam says all the time, be the most normal and average person in the room. Somehow, Jeremy is the most average person. He makes himself the most average person on that season.
He tones himself down.
It's nuts. Yeah.
By the way, I don't think Andrew, because I just got done watching Pearl Islands, I don't think Andrew Savage got screwed.
Get out of here. Don't even, no.
Andrew Savage was so bad in Pearl Islands. And
screwed.
You could say screwed, but he was not winning that game. He wasn't getting close to winning that game.
You're out of your mind. He gets to final two. He wins that game no matter who he sits next to.
Yeah, he's not getting to final two. Survivor's 2 parts, and he's not getting to the end.
He could have. If Lil and Burton don't come back, he brought his tribe all the way back. You're at final 8. Rupert hates fair play. I could see Rupert going over and trying to work with Savage or something. And now all of a sudden they actually
flipping.
Somebody would have flipped. I'm telling you, you would have went in with 4-4 and not an obvious Lil there. I know that's not what this conversation is, but Savage was screwed. The ultimate screw job of all time is in that season.
Even without that twist, Savage doesn't win the game.
Wes. All right. So Wes has been removed.
Oh, he's gone.
No, it's just, but all I'm saying is, even if you don't believe it because you just took your crazy pills and aren't paying attention, if you come back to Cambodia, though, what was the storyline coming into the season? It was, Andrew Savage got screwed. Terry, the ultimate challenge. Everybody else's storyline coming into this season, aside from probably Kimmy Kappenberger, was a bigger storyline than Jeremy Collins. And that's insane to me. Like, that's crazy, but that's really how it was coming into the season.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, but everyone here, I really like how they came in the season with like a tenacity. Like everyone's like, America voted for me to play again, so like I want to play hard, and I love that. I really love that they, even though Wigglesworth was such like a non-factor in the season, I love that she got brought back anyways, because it was like one of those like what ifs, like what happens if Wigglesworth plays again? I mean, she does make the jury, so she wasn't terrible. She just got like. By the way, why she got like no confessionals? I'm looking at her right now.
Oh yeah, she got nothing.
Oh yeah.
What?
I think she got 8, right?
You know,
she's not interesting. That's the problem. I just talked about her in my daily content. I just talked about her. She still could play the game. She just can't play the TV. That's the problem. She's not a good TV personality in modern age. She could still play the game. They voted her out because they thought she could win, but she's not good TV at all.
Yeah, she was perfect for Borneo and not much else. But I agree with that. But no, this season's like, and this is the season where everyone started talking about voting blocks. Like, we're not really in alliances, we're in voting blocks. And then the guy who wins is the only one who I think really had an alliance.
Yeah, he did.
He really hooked Fishback. Like he made Fishback his Fishback, basically from Tocantins. He's just Tocantins. Sorry, people get on me when I say it wrong. He hooked Fishback in, and then he couldn't bring him as far as JT did, but. this was a season full of people playing hard because they really wanted to be here. And it's a shame, by the way, that Terry Dietz had to be
hate it.
Like, and I still now wonder, like, how far would he have gotten?
I think he would have done well.
Because he's really one of the only members from the Kaoh tribe, whatever it was, who even though he didn't get along with people like Abby or something like that, he had worked his way in pretty good with his tribe. Good enough that I think he would have made it pretty far. And I don't think that tribe, the swap tribe that he went to, was never losing before the merge. It had Terry. It had Cass, who's amazing at puzzles. Sierra, who's great at puzzles. It had Joe Anglam, Keith Nail, and Kelly Wentworth. All 6 of them were going to make the merge. It's a stacked tribe. So the fact that Terry had to withdraw is really a shame. But going back to Jeremy, because I could cry about Terry. We should do a Terry Dietz podcast one time. I will just talk about Terry for 4 straight hours. I love that man.
We should do a podcast for all the people who are robbed, and I can argue about Savage for 2 hours.
Yeah, oh, my God. You won't even be allowed to argue because it's just wrong. But I want to ask about this. Coming into this season, and it's one thing that I personally hold against Jeremy, even though I shouldn't. How much emphasis do we put on the fact that there were 3 members from the original Hunapu tribe on this season, and he had a good relationship with all of them? That
really helps. That totally helps.
To be fair, that's how Spencer and Tasha got to the end in a lot of ways, because there's like 4 Cagayan people here as well. Yeah. I know Wu and Cass don't make it far, but it definitely, seasons like this, these returnee seasons it really favors like most recent players, because they're not bringing back 4 people from Panama for Terry Dietz. Like, if that was going to happen, it would happen on Heroes vs. Villains for him.
Yeah.
And like in Game Changers, the Rong 4, like they even if they aren't like all together in their first go round, they have that.
Yeah. And so like when I look at this, one of the things that actually turns me off to Cambodia, because I really like Cambodia as a season, but I don't like it as much as a lot of other people. But one of the things that turns me off is that the final 5 is Cagayan and San Juan del Sur. And I actually wonder in my mind, we know there's so much pre-gaming going on. We know there's so much like that. How much of an impact did that have on this season for the final 5 to be from 2 seasons that were played consecutively? That's a big deal to me, and I think it helped Jeremy a lot.
Kimmy Kappenberg, though, kicked butt on her way to Final 6. Like, I know she gets voted out Final 6, but like, man, like, for someone like her who gets voted out pre-merge in Australian Outback to come in here and just like kick butt her way to Final 6, because she was super annoying on Australian Outback, and I think anyone would agree with that. She was uber annoying, but here she like was so much better in terms of a player. It's like, you're right, Phil. Like, they're these people from the same seasons, of course. Like, she doesn't have the benefit of having Varner at the end for her. She's by herself in that sense.
Yeah.
And without, especially in a season where everyone's like emphasizing so much how there's no alliances, it's just voting blocks. Like, each episode, basically for us, it like changes who's voting for who. But yeah, I agree. I think it's like, it's so we always like fantasize about like, okay, what if we like cast the perfect season where like no one has a partner with them, and they tried doing that on All Stars and just didn't work. Everyone just ended up targeting the winner. There's always going to be a target. There's always a bigger fish,
Wow. We're quoting, if anybody was wondering, we're quoting the Phantom Menace on our podcast.
Oh, yeah.
It's true, though.
Well, that's also and Wes, I know you like to argue with me now. So that is the best Star Wars movie. We're in agreement on that, right? The Phantom Menace.
Let's do a 4-hour podcast on the Phantom Menace.
Let's never do that, Alexa. But if anybody,
on the more recent ones, but that's neither here nor there.
Anybody who wants like a really sick, weird way to look at stuff, go watch the Plinkett reviews of the original Star Wars trilogy. It's one of the funniest, most disturbing things you'll ever see. It's so good. They're like 3-hour episodes, and they are the funniest things ever made. Just throwing that out there.
Almost as bad as My First Son.
Yeah, exactly. Oh my God. But anyway, so yeah, I think that is actually a knock against Jeremy. And as I was saying earlier, if you were to just rank winners, I feel like Jeremy's win goes higher than where Jeremy actually is as a player in Survivor history. Like, if that makes sense, like I might say Jeremy in Cambodia is a top 10 winner, but I don't have Jeremy as like a top 10 player. And that's not just because non-winners are in front of him. I would actually put some other winners as better players than Jeremy, because his San Juan del Sur game exposed some flaws in his game and all of that. And he goes out very early. And then he comes out this time and plays. And I don't know. I think it really helped that he was with people he knew. And somebody in the comments said, well, it's because of the recency bias in the fan voting. Don't put 3 people from the original Hunapu tribe on the second chance ballot.
Right.
Like, and not for nothing, I love Kelly Wentworth. Like, Alexa and I stan the queen, who isn't Michelle. But right. It's really, really hard for me to say, yeah, we needed Kelly Wentworth on that ballot. Like, we didn't. And I get
I'm glad she's on the season, though.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed. Like, I am 100% with that. But I think one of the things here is, like, when you start off that way and then you have Cass, Tasha, Wu, and Spencer, you have 3 people from the original Brains tribe on this season. And I just think that's part of my issue with Cambodia and why, like, Jeremy's win is really hard for me to figure out, because it's a great game. He plays a fantastic game, but a lot of it is based on prior relationships. And I think in Winners at War, we see when he can't use those prior relationships, he gets duped. And it happened to him. I think he played a great game. I think Jeremy's one of the best players of all time, but he did get duped.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if you remove Winners at War and you remove San Juan del Sur, I agree with you. Like, just this season, like, this is one of the like best wins in all 40 seasons of Survivor. Like, this is easily top 10. I haven't done a ranking or anything. I know this is easily top 10 though, this win.
Yeah.
So it's like, when you consider all 3 seasons, like, I understand why Jeremy gets lowered, but for just this season, just this slice, just like with JT, when you just look at the winning season, it's like, what a great win. What a great season. Yeah. What a great win, individually without the other seasons.
Absolutely.
What do you think?
Yeah, Alexa, what do you got?
What? No, I thought we were about to jump into if he can win again.
I think we should.
I was going to say, Alexa, do you agree it's one of the best wins? Did you already answer that question?
I wouldn't put it in like a top 5 win, but I'd put maybe top 10.
Okay. I think it's fair.
Solid numbers wise is 40, 38.
It's one of those. It's one of those. See, this is the way I look at it. Like, I think Jeremy's win is probably better than Wendell's, but I would argue maybe that Wendell's a better player than Jeremy. Like, does that make sense?
Because
we were talking about this with Russell, like, God, I don't know, 3 hours ago at this point, and we were talking about, do winners, like, do they have luck? And I think every single winner has some sense of luck, and maybe Jeremy's luck was that he ends up playing with a lot of people who he's already played with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sure.
That doesn't in any way change how I view his win, because every single winner has that.
I mean, every winner gets lucky from the cast in some way, whether it's by production's choice or not. The cast helps them in some way. It's how they win. So every winner is lucky in some instance. So yeah, I don't like when people are like, "Oh, that winner was lucky." Bro, they're all lucky.
They're all lucky. Everybody had something.
I get to see somebody win all the challenges by themselves and then get to the end and then convince the jury, by themselves. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know.
Now, okay, so let's ask it. Do we think Jeremy could win again? Could somebody who plays like Jeremy win again? And can somebody actually play like Jeremy again?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think Jeremy himself could ever win again. I think we saw in Winners at War. He has 4 kids, and everyone views that as like, I cannot bring this guy to the end. He's too lovable. Jeremy would have to Mike Holloway his way to the end. That's the only way.
Yeah.
I agree with you, Alexa. Like, I think a character like Jeremy though could win, which is, I believe, is what you're saying yes to. Someone like Jeremy. Yeah.
Right. Because it's a strategy. It's not a difficult strategy. I think it's like, especially for his type, it's like it would be easier for someone like me to do a meat shield strategy than it would be for someone like Jeremy to, because he is also a meat shield. But I think people can totally employ that because it's not super obvious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you're not expecting it, actually makes for, like, Alexa, if you went out there and you won all the individual immunities, everyone would be like, who is this?
Yeah. So yeah. But then a meat shield strategy doesn't have to be someone who's good at challenges. It could be like the really strategic person. It could
for sure.
Probably not the really social person, because I don't think people look at it that way, but there are many ways to navigate it.
Yeah.
You're saying that you wouldn't say Michele Fitzgerald is a meat shield? You wouldn't hide behind Michele Fitzgerald?
Cambodia first.
I'm just saying.
Milk it while you can.
I I personally actually believe Jeremy could win the game again. I do, because I think if he were to be cast on a season, he would be one of the lesser threats. Actually, from like what you hear kind of behind the scenes and a lot of this exit press is people weren't going to vote for Jeremy if he made it to the end of Winners at War. I don't think people were very impressed with his game in Winners at War, which I think would actually help him, because I think he was a little lost in Winners at War. I think he was a little stuck. And I think that if he were to come back on a Legend season, I think that he could hide behind people. I think people would underestimate him. And I think he would learn a lot from his loss here. Think about how much he learned from his San Juan Del Sur loss. I think he would learn just as much from his Winners at War loss, and playing on a season with all players we've heard of and have played multiple times. I think he would do a very good job. I don't think anybody can ever play like Jeremy again, though. I don't think we'll ever have another Jeremy play Survivor, because I just think Jeremy is one of a kind. I really do. I think Jeremy is just the guy that he is, and I don't think anybody else can actually play the game that Jeremy does, because I think other people would let their egos drip in and ruin the meat shield, or not allow himself to be told what to do by Tony, or whatever it is. I just think other people would let it seep into the game, and Jeremy just has that calm way about him of being like, it's the best idea I've ever heard, and now I'm going to screw you over with that idea. Like, he's so good at that. I don't think anybody else can pull that off.
Tony had hints of that in Winners of War.
Yes.
Tony ended up taking over the game at some point. But yeah, no, Tony definitely did that in the pre-merge for sure. And early merge, I believe. It was like once the family visit happened, Tony went back to being Tony, but he kind of played a Jeremy-like game through the family visit, I feel like. So
yeah, I think that's fair.
You're talking the whole game, though? It's a harder one to do.
Yeah, I mean, once Tony dupes him, then it's, that's so obvious.
Yeah, it's so obvious. Well, okay, so give me confessionals here, Wes, on this season, because I think this is an interesting one to look at, because a lot of famous favorite players in this one.
Yeah. So I feel like we're in a good spot here in terms of like edits. I feel like we're not talking about any winners who are like, who was this person? We've really moved out of that dark age, like we talked about. So just a reference, I'm going to mention Kaoh Rong here very briefly.
Thank you.
I feel like it's important. But San Juan Del Sur, 445 overall. Worlds Apart, 456. Cambodia, 438. Kaoh Rong has 494, almost 500. So remember that when we talk about the confessionals for the next season. But for Cambodia, I will tell you, your hint is that Spencer has the most confessionals, but Jeremy's tied for second with Kelly Wentworth. So
yeah.
Yes.
And I would say it's probably like 52.
50, yeah, I was going to say 50.
44, actually. Him and Kelly Wentworth both have 50.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Spencer
has 56.
Yeah. And I think the thing with this season is it's one of those where even though the numbers aren't big, this was very evenly edited. I know Kelly Wigglesworth is very low, but for the most part, because it was fan favorites and because people voted them in, they really tried to give their screen time to a lot of people. I know Jeff Varner got so much in just 4 episodes. Abby Maria got a lot. Sierra got her fair share. Cass, Savage. A lot of it. Terry Dietz learned the social game. I mean, we saw a lot of confessionals from players because it was people we all voted in.
The only people who I think were truly screwed by confessionals was Monica Padilla. Terry Dietz surprisingly only had 7 in his 6 episodes. And then Kelly Wigglesworth with 5. Everyone else, from my observances, has a fair amount of confessionals.
Got to say something about Terry, though. He was really only in 5 episodes. They count him as being in the 6th episode, but it literally starts with him being pulled from the game.
But even 7 over 5 episodes, it's not
that's terrible, though.
That's not terrible. It's still over 1 per episode, which I always use as like the cutoff. And you have to think they knew he was getting pulled from the show. If he doesn't get pulled, I think he gets a much bigger edit than that.
And Kimmy Pappenberg only had 13.
Yeah, hers was low.
Yeah, she doesn't get a lot.
Yeah.
She's
a much better character than that. I'm shocked she only had 13.
I know.
She really toned it down this time.
Which is crazy.
She's a screw up.
I think within 3 episodes of Australian Outback, she had more confessionals than she had in all of Survivor Cambodia. I might be wrong on that, but I think I'm right. And because they're throwing us money, I'll throw this up here and I'll leave it open to you guys. Guy 1 and Guy 2. He's one of the most adaptable players, referring to Jeremy. Do we agree with this? Alexa, do we agree with that statement?
I think he's super adaptable. Because I think in San Juan Del Sur, it's kind of like alpha male versus alpha male. And then we never really talk about Jeremy being an alpha male ever again. He then hides behind the alpha male. And then in Winners at War, he's like, he jumps around. Like he and Michele, they bounce around. He's not really married to anybody. So I think he's super adaptable.
He's married to Val.
So Kimmy Kappenberg had 16 in Australian Outback. So yeah, she had 3 more in like 5 episodes versus 14 episodes here. she got a little screwed here on the confessionals in this season.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And another thing, I want to go back to Terry too, because while we're talking about people who got screwed with confessionals,
Sure.
the other problem with Terry was he only went to the first 2 tribal councils, which all happened in one episode. So by the time he actually went to the next 3, he doesn't lose any of those. So there's not much screen time when you're trying to spread it across 3 tribes, and the one tribe is Angkor lost the next 2, and they were a new tribe, so they were building it up. So and then Terry gets pulled from the game right at the beginning of that next episode. So it's not really surprising that his confessional count was as low as it was. Had he gone to more tribals, Terry was very entertaining, and it was brutal when he got pulled from the game. It was brutal. And Kimmy, terrible. Same thing. They kind of gave the low-level confessionals to people who got screwed. Like Kimmy and gets totally screwed. Terry gets totally screwed. And that really is who they gave the lesser confessionals to, other than Kelly Wigglesworth, who just isn't entertaining.
And they do that. They do that with Medivex. They do that with Jessica Lewis and the Rock Jar. Like they do that so that you're not horrified when it happens.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm horrified that Terry Dietz didn't get to play the rest. And I'm glad, by the way, his son is okay for anyone who.
Yeah, that was a
season.
Shitty.
Yeah. I mean, it's like there's nothing anyone could do. But I really wish if they ever do like a Philippines season again, like that kind of thing, Terry, I hope, is one of the 3. You know,
I agree.
That captain like got pulled too early. He needs like that, like the Penner. You know, I hope they do it again. So
and get him before he's too old, because I think he's like around 60 now, something like that. But get him before he becomes like 65, 70. Like get him while he can still win some challenges. He's still in shape. I mean, at the end of the day, he still was in, what was he in, the Air Force or the Navy, whatever it was. So at the end of the day, he's still, you know, a 60-year-old, but he's got the goods to go out there and still compete. We see him compete just 5 years ago in that challenge against Jeremy and Savage, and he still performs really well. I think, does Jeremy win that hero challenge? Is it Jeremy who wins, or no, it's Savage who wins, because Savage does this all like, I've done 2-a-days my whole life. I've never been more exhausted. Like we hear that, and it's brutal.
It sounded like thirsty SpongeBob.
It's terrible, but it's just one of those things, and it comes on the heels of him talking about how terrible and sad his life is with his wife and law school and his beautiful wife and his beautiful daughters. And it's like, I remember reading Dalton Ross's recap, and he's like, Savage, I know everybody else was crying, and I want to cry, but I don't really feel bad for you. And it's so amazing. But I forget exactly who wins the hero challenge. Let me throw it in the chat. But Terry, like, he's one of those guys who, like, even though he's lost a step for sure, like he won't be able to compete the way he did in Panama, but he could come out there and he could still compete with some people. And we see him do that in Survivor Second Chance. He just ultimately doesn't get a full second chance, which is a real bummer.
Yeah. Yeah. We need another, no one ever talks about it, but I would love another Philippine season where like 3 people who were medevaced or had to drop early, not due to their own fault. I would love for them to do another season like that. I feel like that's the kind of captain season I think we're all okay with.
Yeah. I agree, especially if it's Terry. You could have Terry be the captain of all 3 teams.
Terry just like walks from tribe to tribe. He's like, all right, guys, what are we doing here?
What are we doing? This way he can't be voted off. He gets automatic immunity to get to the merge. God, I want him so bad.
He's at tribal, like eating beef stew, watching his own tribe give.
I love it. I love that. That's
the Palau thing. Yeah.
The Palau. I'm so bummed that he didn't make it. But anyway, I guess that's neither here nor there, and we have to move on with our lives. Do you have anything else to say before we actually get into the next 3 hours of the podcast?
Take it away, Phil.
No, hold on. Let me double check my notes. Is there anything else I can say?
I
will say, okay, we haven't talked about Spencer briefly. I want to say Spencer, like from the way that this season was edited, it seemed clear. It seemed like they're really setting up Spencer for a win. And then for him to get shut out in the finales, like I was honestly, my mind was blown that he was shut out. In retrospect, it makes sense, but watching the season, they really built up Spencer a lot this season with his like growth arc, like how he's grown as a person and whatever. Him telling his girlfriend he loves her, I think it's what it was.
I think it was Kimmy Kappenberg who said, and at the end of the day, no one cares. I think she said something along those lines where that is the most true statement of all time. They tried to show his growth, and all we felt was nothing. Like I didn't like. They tried to push it on.
I couldn't.
It wasn't real. It wasn't real.
Yeah, I just want to point that out because when I watch the season, I'm like, okay, they're doing a lot to build Spencer. Even if he finishes second, it's like going to be like a 6-4 vote. No, 10-0.
10-0. Amazing. We all thought it was going to be the tie. That's what Will and I, if you go listen to our Cambodia pre-finale predictions, we thought it was going to be a tie. We really did.
It was the way it was shown, the way it was edited. You think so?
Yeah, be either between Jeremy and Spencer or Jeremy and Kelly Wentworth. We thought it was going to be a 5-5 tie.
I understand why. Kelly Wentworth played a heck of a game, but
yeah.
All right, let's move over to your.
All right, hang on. I want to make sure I look good and everything, and everything's good to go here. All right, so we're going on to Survivor Kaoh Rong to talk about the best winner of all time. My favorite thing ever, and I've brought this up a couple times, but my favorite thing ever is that people are already mad at me for putting Michele in my top 5 players of all time. And I didn't put Michele in my top 5 players of all time, but I've been seeing comments like that as we go through the top 100 and this type of thing. People are already so annoyed. But that's okay because I don't give a shit. I've been dealing with it for the last 4 years, and I'm going to be honest, it's only made me stronger. But Michele goes out there in Survivor Kaoh Rong, and a lot of people are really disappointed she wins. I mean, not even really disappointed, like unbelievably disappointed that she beats Aubrey at the end. Everybody thought Aubrey had it in the bag. Aubrey has the really big underdog edit from the beginning when Michele's tribe just keeps winning because, now that's a negative in Survivor. If you win immunity before the merge and you don't go to tribal councils, that's automatically a knock against you because you didn't really play the game.
Unless you're Tom Westman, then it's okay.
It's so ridiculous. I can't get over it. So Aubrey goes through her arc and we see her breaking down on day 1. I wish you guys knew me outside of the game, and she comes back in. And Michele just has this really steady edit throughout. And everybody's like, well, what is she doing? What is she doing? Alexa, I know you just rewatched this season, and I know I said I was going to open this to Wes first, but Wes has pissed me off so much tonight because he doesn't believe Andrew Savage was screwed.
He wasn't.
I was really excited for Wes to sing Michele's praise.
I'm going to do it right now. I'm just kidding. Wes, I just had to throw in one last shot at you for Savage.
I mean, do you want me to play devil's advocate?
I don't want you to play devil's advocate. I want you to say how you really feel about Michele Fitzgerald.
Okay.
Seriously.
Well, okay. So I know I mentioned this in previous podcasts, but after China, I joined the Navy, or maybe it was Micronesia, I joined the Navy. So I was like, that's when I stopped watching Survivor. So the first season I come back to when I get out of the Navy and I watch from beginning to end live is this season. And we get through the finale and I'm like, Michele, who? Which even though the confessional count says I should know who Michele is, and even rewatching it with my wife, knowing that she wins, they do a terrible job telling her story. It reminds me a lot of Jenna Maraska or Vesepia, early seasons, or even Sophie from South Pacific. It's like, who is this person? What? So I know you love her, and she has the content, to support that. If it feels like you should know her, but by the end, I feel like I don't really know Michele. I feel like in Winners at War, I got to know Michele a lot better than Michele, who she actually is. So it's unfortunate because we really get to know Aubrey, and I think that's really why everyone thinks Aubrey's robbed. But I actually think Aubrey kind of falls into this is not to the same extreme, but the Russell Hantz role. And strategically, on the underdog tribe, we get so much content from her. We were rooting for her. She's always telling us what's going on. She's always talking to us. She seems very smart. She really kind of falls in that Russell Hantz role. Not with all of the character stuff in terms of the bad character stuff with Russell, but in terms of how much she's shown, how invested we get in her. And it's weird that they did this because Michele clearly was playing a better social game if you're really paying attention to it, knowing who wins.
It's blatant. And it's one of those things, and I don't know why that keeps happening. But I do want to say, if I don't think that's you in the chat, but if it is you, tweet at us so that we can just get really excited here. But I don't think it's you. But anyway, the thing is, it's actually a really obvious win. And Alexa, I know you just watched this season. You just rewatched it not too long ago, right? What is your take? Because everybody already knows how I feel about Michele, and I drove them nuts for 47 episodes of our podcast.
My take on Michele, it actually kind of fits with the theme of what we've been talking about for the past hour and a half, where, okay, Michele didn't play a flashy challenge game. She did not play a flashy idol game. She played a social game, and we hate her for that. Mm-hmm. And it's now to the point where the game of Survivor has pretty much been changed so that does not happen again. And I watched the majority of Winners at War with my family because I was home for the past 4 months. And my parents my family's not the biggest Michele fan. They didn't really know where she came from. And then watching her at Winners at War, they were like, oh my God, that's you out there. That's just my friend out there. She's fighting. She's relatable. She's normal. And I think it took Winners at War for people to appreciate that about her. And I think we haven't had just like a normal bartender, like very, very normal person just win because she was generally likable. And people were upset about that because she lost to who we are conditioned to believe is the type of person to win Survivor. But that doesn't matter.
Well, and I'm going to put this up here right now from JBPB Productions. Joe Del Campo's steak overdue cost Aubrey the win. It's the biggest myth in the history of the show is that Michele got lucky because Joe Del Campo went home at Final Five. It's the biggest myth in the history of the show. Yes, Aubrey had Joe in her back pocket. And yes, Aubrey would have ended up maybe doing more with Joe. And maybe it's Sydney who goes home there or Ty who goes home at 5. But at the end of the day, why does Michele get no luck? Like, why do we not say, oh, wow, she got lucky? Or why do we only say, oh, she got so lucky? When Aubrey Bracco goes home in 11th place or 12th, whatever it is, if Neil does not get pulled from the game. If Neil doesn't get pulled from the game, Aubrey's gone. Mm. And so she gets so much time to adjust her game. After that, what is it that makes it so much more lucky for Michele than Aubrey? Also, Aubrey's so lucky because instead of starting on a tribe with Caleb Reynolds and Nick Mariano and Ty Trang, she started on a tribe with Debbie and Joe, who she could absolutely walk all over the entire game. So, like, I hate the whole idea that Michele only won the game because of luck. It's just not true. Now, Wes, I do agree with you that they didn't do a good job of telling her story. Right. It's very easy to see that she's going to win if you sit there and you watch it. And, like, when I said, I'm pretty sure, and I might be wrong, and I think I even given, I'm like, Aubrey's probably going to win, but this is who Michele would get. I'm pretty sure that if you go back and you watch our Kaoh finale preview, I pretty much call every single person who would vote for Michele. All you had to do was watch this season. And I know, like, at the time, like, I'm not saying, Wes, oh, you didn't watch the season or anybody like that. But
well, I was very much casual when I got it.
Exactly.
I had the perfect casual mindset when I'm like, how did Michele win?
And what annoys me is if you went and looked at every single other Survivor content producer at that time and saw when they did jury roulette who they picked to win, every single one of them picked Aubrey to win in a landslide, no matter who she sat down next to. And it's like, okay, I understand, like, it did feel like it was going to be Aubrey, but nobody even had Michele as, like, the number 2 choice for a lot of these people. And it was like, you just had to actually watch beyond Aubrey's storyline. Like, I understand that Aubrey's storyline is the more coherent storyline. Mm-hmm. It's the better storyline. It's the one we want to see win. But if you look at Michele, what she did, it's not shocking she wins or gets the vote she does in any way, shape, or form. I just can't help. I have to get on my soapbox because this is the time I can really get on my soapbox. But it's not shocking. It's really not shocking. However, again, Wes, you're 100% right. The story for Aubrey is a million times better. It's the same. Yeah. It's like Terry Dietz versus Aris. I want Terry to win because his story makes sense. Aris's story just feels like it's doing whatever the hell it wants throughout. That's Michele.
Yeah. Well, to get the how to win Survivor is not who has the best story. It's
exactly
who can convince the jury to vote for them and get to the end. Michele, only eligible 6 tribals. Great job. She's not eligible to be voted out a lot of times. And the same thing with Tom Westman, who I think is the one we've taught. I'm pretty sure no one's ever going to beat him. Where he's only eligible 3 tribals to be voted out. Like Michelle's eligible what? I don't know, 5 or 6. I think it's but it's so few, and it's good. Like the less chances people can vote you out, that's a good thing.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. No, she's only eligible at 4 because she wins 2 individual immunities.
Oh, and we're also supposed to hate her because her tribe does well in challenges, so she can't go to tribal council, right?
Good on her because and I think what's great too is now we have Winners of War to back up that Michelle's not a bad player at all because even though she's on the bottom at Winners of War, terms of she still gets her way to the end. Scrappy underdog Michele there gets her way to the end. So it kind of reiterates, and what we see here is that Michele is a great social player. She may not come out there and play idol at the perfect time to like get like Kelly Wentworth to like knock out 9 votes. But she plays a great social game, and if you really watch the season and you're looking for what Michelle's doing, you see her constantly talking to people, constantly confronting people. It's kind of in the background, but they do show it. And I think this is another season where it's like a classic case of once in a while we need a reminder, we need a smack in the face from Survivor to remind us what this game is really about and why people win. And it's not because you played 4 idols for yourself. Like that's a way to get to the end, but it's not how you win the game. And I feel like Kaoh Rong is like the most recent example I can think of where it's like, hey, everyone, this is how you win the game. Like, it doesn't matter about everything else. This is it. Get to the end, convince the jury. That's all you got to do.
And that's what bothers me about Samoa and South Pacific and Kaoh Rong and conveniently a lot of seasons that have women winners. You could have told Michelle's story. When Michelle's crying at Final Tribal Council saying she's so proud of herself, why don't you like give me the winners at war story of like Michelle trying to prove herself? Give me that in Kaoh Rong, and then I can totally get behind her. I don't know why we have to tell. Like, I believe it's important to tell the second place story, but don't make us prefer them because Michelle ended up winning, and now we're just like, well, who's Natalie White? Like, I'm sure there is Natalie White content we could have had. I am sure we could have been shown that Michelle did more, but
they were setting up Aubrey as the next female super character for the 30s. They knew they needed it. They knew they had somebody, and you had Kelly Wentworth, who was your physical, and you had Aubrey, who was your brains, and you could put them on the same season as we see them do. And a lot of people in here, and this isn't about Winners at War, but a lot of people are in here like Wes, after you said that she played a really great game in Winners at War and it actually made her better. Everybody who's like, oh, she got exposed, she voted wrong every time. She was telling people what they needed to do in order to win the game. It's not her fault they all didn't listen to her. Like,
who you vote for doesn't matter when you're in the final tribal unless it gets brought up. That's the only time it matters. Like, Rick Devens didn't vote right, barely at all. But if he gets to the final tribal, like, he is a fire-making challenge away from winning that game. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. You vote wrong every time. Sandra Pearl Islands votes wrong. Like, quite a few. And when Heroes vs. Villains, I could be wrong on that one. But, like, you don't have to vote right every time. That's not what the game's about. The game is not about voting right every time. You don't get to the end, Jeff has a counter. Well, who voted right the most? Check mark. Who won the most individual immunities? Check mark. Who played the most idols? Like, this is not a checklist of things. You only have 2 things to do. Michelle did.
Don't give Jeff any ideas.
And I'm just sitting here with Guy 1 and Guy 2 again. Get to the end, convince the jury. Yeah. This definition for winning is just what winning is by definition, not what separates winners from one another. Yeah. And it's so true. Like, just get to the end and win the game. And I think, like, the thing is, Nick and Ben and Jeremy, Michelle told them all what to do the entire time, and they all just ignored her. Like, everybody was dismissive of Michelle, I think because of how they felt about her coming off of season 1 or her first season in Kaoh Rong. I think they all just underestimated her. And then you go and you see her in Winners at War, and she's telling them all what to do as they're getting voted out. She's kind of like Sandra in Heroes versus Villains in that way, where it's like, if you don't do this, you're going to lose. And then the player doesn't do what she tells them to do. And then they lose. And it's not surprising. So when you go back and you look at what she did in this other season, everybody wants to sit here in Kaoh Rong and be like, oh, well, she got lucky. She wasn't actually able to be voted out until, the first boot episode. Neil gets medevaced, and then she finally goes to a tribal council, and it's episode 8, I believe. Okay. And that was the first time Nick Mariano could be voted out too. And you know what happened? He got voted out. He went home. So, like, just because you didn't go doesn't mean that means you're like a worse player somehow. Like, Nick Mariano went home at that point. So it's just really interesting to me how Michelle is viewed. And then when you actually start to look at how her end game was, as soon as she no longer had control of the game, which arguably everybody will say she didn't ever have control of the game, although her and Aubrey almost vote identically after the merge, which is hilarious. The one time that they don't vote the same is when Michelle votes for Ty and Aubrey votes for Scott, and Scott goes home, which ultimately ends up being a good wrong vote because Scott votes for Michelle. But when you actually sit down and you look at how this plays out, you say she's not in control. Okay, so then she wins individual immunity. and then she wins individual immunity, and she gets an extra vote so she can throw another vote at tie just in case something's going on, which she ends up being completely wrong in that situation, but she at least has an advantage. She wins the challenge that allows her to remove a juror, which a lot of people hate, and I personally hate too, but I don't feel bad that she removes Neil, who was the first one, and also medevac, like whatever. And also, she won that challenge. Aubrey should have won that challenge, or Aubrey should have won the immunity when Julia went home, or won the immunity when Sydney goes home.
Newsflash: if Aubrey played the best game this season, she would have won.
Yeah, that's all I say, man.
Doesn't mean she's the worst player or a better player than Michele. Like, we're not arguing about who's a better player. Though, if you were to look at Aubrey in Game Changers, Aubrey in Edge of Extinction, you can't compare it to Michele Winners of War. But for this season, Michele played the best game. Period. Like,
absolutely.
You only play on the season you're on. You're not playing, as we mentioned with Mike, you're not playing on, and yet, Aubrey's not playing Millennials versus Gen X. Michelle's not playing Heroes versus Healers versus Hustlers. She's playing Kaoh Rong, and she wins Kaoh Rong. She played the best Kaoh Rong game.
Yeah.
I mean,
I totally agree.
It's hard because I think a lot of this comes from I think there's much fewer super fans who argue this. It's a lot more what I observe casuals, especially on Facebook, who have like these basic takes of like, oh, Michelle's terrible, she shouldn't have won, because they watched season once and then they can't even remember, they just remember the name, that they don't like the person. They don't look at this thing the way we do. And I'm not like here to bash on a group of people, but I think that's where a lot of this like rhetoric, is that the right word? That's a lot of where this thought process comes from. Is that like a large group of people thinks this, therefore it must be true. Not so.
Not so. And my question to both of you, and I have the same answer I know as both of you. Who's better TV, Aubrey or Michele?
Oh, Aubrey.
Alexa? Yeah, it's Aubrey.
Personal opinion, Aubrey, yeah.
No, but I personally, I think it's 100% Aubrey. Aubrey is better TV than Michele. And it's the same thing as Rupert is better TV than Sandra. Some people argue that now, but at the time, Rupert was always better TV. But better TV doesn't necessarily mean better player. No. Aubrey had the inherent storyline. She is so easy to sell to an audience.
Yes.
Michele isn't. That's just the fact. Rob Sesternino is very easy to sell to an audience. Jenna Maraska isn't. It's how it works. And when you're a TV producer, you sit down and you say, we have this underdog character who is going to go all the way to Final 3, win the fire making challenge after almost quitting on day 1, and sit in the final tribal council. She's not going to win, but that's what she's going to do. That is I mean, if I'm an editor, I haven't edited anything since college. I could edit that and I could make millions of dollars off that. It's easy. Michele's is not easy, but Michelle still got 57 confessionals on this season.
I think if Aubrey loses, is actually the one who's in the fire making challenge and loses here. Because she was in the fire making, doesn't she win though? She wins
the fire making. She beats Sydney in the fire making.
Part of this is like, if she loses fire making, I think she kind of falls into like the Devin spot where it's like,
oh yeah,
I know what could have been, but at least the best player at the end won. Because I do think Michele still beats Sydney, even though Sydney, I mean, it could be debated. I guess Sydney, I think, has a chance, but I still think Michele wins.
The problem was Scott and Jason were always going to vote Michele.
I know. Yeah, she just has a chance. I don't think it's. By the way, I know everyone hates Scott and Jason, but the episode I'm double checking, the one it's called "It's Psychological Warfare," is one of my top Survivor episodes from start to finish. This because it plays out so like perfectly for them, even though they're like villains. Where it's like, they're like, we're gonna get revenge on anybody. We're gonna hide the hatchet, hide the axe. And it's like, it's a great one-off episode.
Yeah, they're crazy. And I understand why people don't like them, but all I'm saying is they were always going to vote Michele, and I actually find them both to be very entertaining, even if it got nasty
they're
at some
great
point.
TV.
Yeah. And this is also something, and this is kind of a different discussion, but also something that I think is fascinating about Survivors. We always assume if you finish one spot away from the final tribal council, you would have won. Kara Kay would have won. No, she wouldn't have. Kara Kay will tell you she wouldn't have won. Kara Kay knows she wouldn't have won, and she'll tell you she might have gotten 2 or 3 votes. So, like, when you start breaking it down that way, I actually think the best thing that could have happened for Michele and this community is that she sat next to Aubrey. Because now there really isn't any question. If Aubrey gets 4th place and loses the fire making challenge, Aubrey is probably in a lot of people's top 20 players of all time.
Sure.
She probably still is in a lot of people's top 20 players of all time, but that's probably because they can only name 50 players. That's the difference here. And that's not meant to be like a knock or snarky, but it's true. Like my dad would put Aubrey in his top 20 players because he can't name 21 players. So like I just think it's interesting how we always have this assumption that the fourth place or third place finisher would win the game, depending if it's a final two or final three. And in this situation, and in the Natalie White versus Russell Hantz situation, we see what actually happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, I think it goes all the way back to season 3 with Africa. You know, like, does Lex beat Ethan at the end? Because I can't think of the third place person winning in Borneo or Australia Outback. So it goes all the way back to Africa, and I don't think Lex beats Ethan. I think Ethan is a lot more liked, just really thought out. Because so here we are in season 32 talking about something, and it's like finally it's like we get this a couple times, like Ozzy, another one. If Ozzy gets eliminated at Final 4 instead of getting Final 3, people can be like Ozzy would have won the season. Yep. It's like no, Ozzy doesn't win the season, so we all have like. What's the word? We all have that like answer in our head. Like we don't have to stare with this question where it's like, does Rob Sesternino beat Jenna? Like, let me look at the jury. Like, how would the jury vote? We don't have that question. Would Fair Play beat Lil?
And it really does go all the way back to the beginning because it's from season 3 on. Season 3, we ask about Lex. Season 4, Kathy Vavrick O'Brien. Season 6, Sesternino. Season 7, Fair Play. Season 9, people kind of not. I'm just kidding. Season 10, Ian Rosenberg. We don't know. Season 11, Rafe. Season 12, Terry. Season 13, if Ozzy would have lost. Like you can just season 14, man. You just keep going and it starts to get exhausting. Season 16, Sari. It happens all the time, and it's this assumption we make as Survivor fans where we almost want to say to ourselves, the winner of the season actually isn't. It's not exciting. It should have been the person who didn't make Final Tribal. But I would probably guess that let's say this has happened 20 times in the history of the show. In 10 of those occasions, the same winner probably still would have won. Yeah. And so that's something that I think we miss, and it's not always correct. And people will say it about Sydney. Oh, if she would have made it against Michelle, she would have won. She wouldn't have beaten Michelle. She wasn't going to beat Michelle because Michelle was still going to get Julia's vote. Michelle was still going to get Scott's vote. She was still going to get Jason's vote. And then there was, Debbie was never going to vote for Aubrey. Maybe she votes for, but either way, it's a 7-person jury. Michelle's going in with 3 votes locked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I don't know. The debate is interesting. I think when the season's first up, but like years later, I'm like, okay, guys, can we move on?
We can't.
I feel like, especially though, like had neither Michelle or Aubrey ever played again, I understand the debate still happening, but like we've seen them both play again, and I think what I've learned is that Michelle's the better player in my opinion. I think Aubrey is a more interesting character. Like Rupert is an amazing character, and I'm not comparing the two directly. Rupert is not good strategically at all. Aubrey is actually really good strategically. Her social game needs work. But and Rupert's social game is great, but his strategic game needs a lot of work. But I just feel like Aubrey makes great TV and Michelle is a better player.
Michelle, and again, like we talked about this at the beginning of the episode with Natalie Anderson, her average placement is technically 1.5, although there's a giant asterisk next to that because she was voted out first in Winners at War.
We can't do this. No. If Kaoh Rong, Michelle's only there to play Kaoh Rong and win. Natalie's only there to play Winners at War and win. She gets second. It's not. There's no
voted out.
You play the season you're on.
Okay, but listen to what I'm saying though. What I'm saying is Michelle goes out, finishes first and third. Her average placement is second place without being voted out, which out of Survivor history, for anybody who's played the game more than once, the average placement of 2 without being voted out is the best in the history of the show. Natalie Anderson was voted out. You can't change. I mean, there's no denying that she was voted out. She finished in a better spot than Michelle, but she did get voted out. So if you're talking about just people who didn't get voted out, so all I'm saying is, in terms of Aubrey versus Michelle, I just sit here and I go, Michelle's average finish is second place. And I know Aubrey had a target on her back going into Game Changers or whatever, but what did Aubrey doing Game Changers that made us go, oh my God, I love, like, it's just crazy. And it's crazy that we've spent so much time talking about Aubrey, even in this segment, because you cannot possibly talk about Michelle without talking about Aubrey the same way you can't talk about Natalie White without talking about Russell Hantz.
I think we do need to talk about Ty a little bit because Ty, spoiler alert, has the most confessionals of the season and is such a huge character, and he does a lot of strategic things. He just does a lot of them wrong.
Yeah.
Because he really burns Scott and Jason. And it's like, if he doesn't burn Scott and Jason, of course, the season plays out a little differently. Yeah. But that Super Idol play where he doesn't give it to Scott is like, especially after watching It's Psychological Warfare, that episode, and then we move right into the next episode where he burns Scott. It's like a back-to-back episode. It's like a great back-to-back watch. Like, Oh,
Yeah.
it's so hard, but it's like amazing, and it's like that. But stuff like that is why Ty gets 0 votes at final, even though he's like such a sympathetic character going into final. You know,
Absolutely.
and he gets no votes, but it also it makes sense.
And once again, it goes back to just like it's character. Ty and Aubrey are so much more interesting than Michele. That doesn't mean they're better players than Michele. So even though we can get on their sides because they're underdogs and stuff, really Michelle's the ultimate underdog because by the time she sits at final 3, we go, how the hell is she going to pull this off? Which is exactly what we were asking about Aubrey and Ty on day 1.
Yeah.
Boom.
What
Roasted.
do you think, Alexa, about Ty?
I don't know. I think Ty's he adds a lot of character.
Yes.
And I love watching him. I think you made a good point. Strategic wise, he tries, but he does miss the mark sometimes. But I think from a character perspective, I love Ty.
When he tried climbing that tree and he got himself all bloody, I'm like,
amazing.
I'm like, that's perfect for like what Ty's game is. Like he's trying so hard, he's just doing it wrong.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
He's trying so hard, and it's like I want to root for you, but you're doing this wrong. Get a stick.
Let's
Francisca, he'll hook you up.
Nope. No, he had to climb it. And I love also then you look at the Braun tribe who is supposed to just be all muscle and will climb the tree and they use a stick. But all right, so confessionals, Michele had 57, Aubrey had 71, and Ty had like 86 or something like that. Am I right on those?
Well, I know if Michele and you could get married, you would. So you already knew her confessional count. But Aubrey at 70, Ty at 74.
Okay, so
then from there, this is actually a season where it's almost 500, which is like we have not had that in so long. And just like eyeballing it, Borneo still has the most and will never be topped at 657. Australian Outback at 562. And I think from there, we don't get close. This might be a season with the third most confessionals, and I'm double checking everything.
And the reason for that is because of all the medevacs, and that at the final 4, it was actually at the final 3, they have a challenge where to vote off a juror rather than do anything because of all the medevacs and stuff like that. So there was more time to be able to give to the characters because of all of that going on. And aside from the Caleb episode, I'm pretty sure that the confessionals in each episode, there were so many every single time. But the Caleb episode, I'm pretty sure there was like 6 or 7 zeros straight across
the next to last episode. You're right. Almost it has one more confessional in the finale, which is like unheard of because of the Joe medevac.
And they couldn't speed through that. They couldn't speed through that at all.
The fact is that they gave Michele so many confessionals, and it's like, and it's great they did that. They didn't they didn't pull it as Sophie. Like I can't, like we can say the editors did a terrible job, but like in reality they gave her like 57
a lot.
But it goes back to what we're saying. It's like it's not just confessionals; it's moments in camp, and I can't name a single moment in camp for Michele. Whereas like I can name moments for Ty and for Aubrey. So it's not just professionals, but yeah, I'm like eyeballing it. And I just went through every season real quick, and this season has the third most. Oh, almost. Island of the Idols is 494. Is that what does this have again? This has 494.
Island of the Idols is unfair though because Sandra and Rob count towards that, and they're in every episode.
Oh yeah. If you remove Sandra and Rob, you're right. It's like 460.
Yeah. So what I want to ask, and then we can end this thing. Can Michele win again, and can a player like Michele win again?
I don't think Michele can win again because she got third on Winners at War, but I think a player like Michele can win again.
I actually go the opposite. I think Michele finally has the respect, so I think if she can get to the end, she can win. But I think your very, very quiet woman can't win.
I disagree.
The problem with Michele,
I would love that. I would love to be wrong.
The problem with Michele is that because she got like not an Aubrey story, but she got like the story like Aubrey. She has a story in Winners at War, and now she's in the forefront of all of her brains where she not played, and she just went from Kaoh to like whatever the next season where they allow winners. I think she would have a better shot.
I think it'd have to be a while, but I think you're like, what if I'm going between Michele and Jeremy? I'm not going to vote on Michele.
No,
sure.
I think so. Let me jump in here because I'm obviously who the people are paying to see for this one.
About proposing to her? I don't know if you.
I mean, Pete would probably beat the crap out of me with his pinky. So no,
not dating anymore.
Not dating anymore. Okay, well, I'm gonna be podcasting from a different location because I'm moving. But so I think Michele could win again. She would have to not sit next to Tony. That's for sure. No edge of extinction. That's also important for her type of game. I also think, and I'm saying this, and I'm telling, and I know that it always comes across sexist, and you're like, perfect female game. But I'm telling you, if you're a woman to go out and play Survivor, Michele plays the perfect female game because Chrissy Hoffbeck doesn't win because people didn't like her.
Yeah.
In season 30, whatever, I'm talking Angelina, people didn't vote for her because people didn't like her. Laurel didn't get votes not because she was quiet, but because she didn't do anything. Like, she didn't do anything. She wasn't even social where everybody wanted, and she sits next to the two biggest threats. You go to Edge of Extinction. Victoria would have won that game if she sat at Final 3. And I think that that's something people don't miss. And who does Victoria play like? She plays just like Michele. A little bit of strategy, but mostly social. You go to season 39, Lauren Beck wins Survivor. She hits the Final 3. Maybe loses to Tommy, but she beats Dean. She beats Nora, whatever. Lauren Beck. And she doesn't do anything crazy. This type of social game, I actually think, is the way to win because there's no way that somebody could sit there at the final tribal council and do everything that Sarah Lacina argued against in this last season and say, oh, well, if a man did it, you would vote for it, but a woman did it, you did. Michele will never have that problem, I don't think. I really don't, because Michele doesn't play that type of game. If a man did what Michele did, I actually think the man wouldn't win. But I think the woman would, and that's what's interesting about the way she plays, I think.
I think
Tommy is that guy, though.
That's true. That is very true. I also think, though, he sat next to Nora and Dean, and that really helped because there was no bigger person. There was no Aubrey sitting next to Tommy. I think if Dean had played a much more strategic game rather than just sitting there with all the bling, like he said, if he'd actually utilized that bling, I think that Dean probably could beat Tommy because of that. I think Lauren, though, I do think Lauren probably beats Tommy, even though Tommy will tell you you're insane for thinking that.
I think what's important, and you know, we can say it's unfair all day, but the reality is when you go into a show like this, into these like social games, you have to accept the fact that who you are is going to affect how people perceive you. Mm-hmm. You know, so like if you're Michele, you're going to be perceived differently than if I went in the game, or Phil, if you go in the game, or Alexa goes in the game. Like, we're not all going to be perceived the same, and you have to play with. You got to start there. Like, Mike Holloway can never play the same game as Michele. Michele can never play the same game as Mike Holloway. By the way, everyone, I'm wearing the Soleil buff because we had 3 Soleil people tonight. I forgot to mention it. But anyways, so I just think you have to play to who you are. So if you're a female, unfortunately, you're going to be viewed differently. But for a male, it's the same way, in a different way. Like, you're expected to do certain things because you're a male. And so it's like you either need to embrace that and do what is expected, or if you're going to do something different, you have to then show everyone why what you did is valuable, even though it's not what people expected of you to do. So it's a social game. It's the world we live in. It's unfair, you know, but it's like we all don't enter the game equally. We all enter with different expectations and how people view us. And it's just, you have to accept it, you know?
So Alexa, when you're on season 41, I think that's perfectly put, Wes. Alexa, when you're on season 41, who are you playing like?
I'll probably play like Michele.
There you go. You learned something tonight. Yes. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I really do believe, and I think that's what we've seen in the past. When we talk about the robbed women, it's the women who really eat up, like we love, like Chrissy, great screen time, great character, all of those things. But the flaw that got Ben the votes over Chrissy, which we'll talk about next week, makes sense. And you can't use those against Michele. And I think that's what's important. And look, I laugh at it this way. And this is, I guess, a good point to end on. Russell Hantz puts Tommy as like his 89th best winner, 89th best player. And he thinks Michele, I don't know where he has her, but it's somewhere top 20, 30. That's hilarious to me because they play almost identical games. But it just shows exactly what you just said, Wes. The men are kind of viewed different. Men and women are just viewed differently. Yeah. And while it definitely affects the women more in Survivor because we've seen so many more men win, we still see how it can affect the men when they come out to play too.
Gavin Whitson on Edge of Extinction, he plays, in my opinion, a Michele-like game, but it's not respected overall.
Not at all. So he didn't even make my top 100 players, and he never received a vote against him. That's insane. That's really insane.
Wait till next week because I don't know what you guys think about Ben, but I love Ben, and I will defend Ben's win. So I hope we're all on the same page, but if not, I'm ready.
I think it's going to be fun. I think it'll be fun. But we're through our 8th episode. We only have 2 episodes left of this, 8 more winners to discuss. I can't believe we started this 2 months ago, and my life has not gotten any better than it was. But anyway, Alexa or Wes, I'll open it to you first, and then Alexa. Wes, What do you got coming up? Where can people
Sure.
find you? Give us the
So I
rundown.
mentioned this at the beginning of the podcast, but in case you missed it, I'm dropping the Tony Vlachos Winners at War story video next week. It's going to be massive. It's over 50 minutes long at least. I also want to say that I have some other fun story videos coming up the next few weeks, including an Amazing Race story, since Amazing Race is coming up this fall. I don't know if you guys knew, but Ethan Zahn and Jenna Maraska played together in the Amazing Race.
For one day.
Yeah, but hey, it was 2 episodes. But anyways, I have a story video about them coming up too. Also, and this is completely not me, but there's a YouTube channel called Analytical Strategy. I think you guys should check him out. It's a pretty good channel. I just discovered it like today, and I'm like, whoa, like this guy's like he's really into like analyzing the strategy of Survivor. So I think it's fun. But that's all I got coming up for me. What about you guys? I know you have a Patreon thing.
Do we have a Patreon thing, Alexa?
Well, we have daily content, everybody. We actually we at the moment we have this standing. So next Monday we're going to be here again, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, doing our penultimate episode. Like Phil said, we've been doing this for 2 months. But in terms of scheduling, Phil and I have just been looking at the past few months and trying to figure out what to do, because normally we'd be preparing for some preseason content at this point. So if you guys have any ideas, any suggestions, Phil and I have plenty, but we always want to hear from you guys. But Phil, what daily content?
Daily.
If you are a patron.
If you're a patron, you get the daily content of me going through my top 100 players. And if you're a $20 patron, that's going to continue. You don't have to become a $20 patron yet, but I'm saying that the daily content, eventually my top 100 players list is going to run out. But if you become a $20 patron, I'm going to continue to try to find a way to at least do more than twice weekly, probably content, at least until I get a job or something. But anyway, the daily content, I just went through. This is Monday, July 20th. I just did my 80th and 79th, which were revealed today, which was Kelly Wigglesworth and Coach Ben Wade, which everybody gave me a hard time for, but Coach can never win Survivor, so what do I care? Tomorrow, 78 and 77 are dropping. The next day, 76 and 75. Are you catching the drift here? You're getting 2 episodes a day for arguably the next 40 days. Are you kidding me? That's 6 weeks worth of daily content. You're going to be so tired of getting the freaking updates on your phone that you're probably going to end up sending me a message and say, screw you. I am no longer a patron because I'm getting too much content. It's overwhelming my ears and I can't take it anymore, Phil. I need you out of here. But also, if you're a $5 patron, you got the Q&A today for $5, $10, and $20 patrons. If you're only a $1 patron, we still like you, even though we don't like you as much as our $20 patrons, but we still like you, and you get in our Facebook group and you can do a lot of fun stuff that we have coming up in our next couple of weeks. I mean, you have until July 25th to vote on something. So become a patron soon and do all of that. And I guess that's it. Alexa, did you want to, I know it doesn't sound right for me to end.
No, that's really it. You guys know how to find us on social media. We're at 9,100 followers on YouTube. So get us to 10,000. That's a huge milestone for us. So hit that subscribe button, give us 5 stars on iTunes, wash your hands, and we will see you guys next week or tomorrow morning if you subscribe to daily content.
Daily content. Daily. We need a